I tell people, if you have a passion, that's one thing, but you need to know how to execute on the passion and make yourself valuable. Because if you make yourself valuable in something that you do, you will not only earn a living, you can thrive from it. Investments are almost a commodity if you're educated in how to handle it. People should be able to make reasonably good decisions there, but it's the financial decision making that they get caught up on. Like, I can afford that $1.5 million house, current mortgage rates that are here, but really they can't. Really, their affordability is about a $750,000 house. Well, how do they know that? Family can be not necessarily blood. It can be who becomes your family, who you create as family. I think that where you do have blood family, appreciate the uniqueness, but find the similarity and stay connected.
She's been in Naples for 45 years, long enough to have run the very first event inside the Ritz-Carlton on opening day. Kim Ciccarelli Kantor is the heart behind one of Southwest Florida's most extraordinary family wealth advisory firms. A practice built not just on financial expertise, but on fierce belief that money is only meaningful when it serves the people you love. Kim opens up about becoming an instant mom overnight, the devastating loss of her husband at just 49, and how every challenge she's faced has made her more grateful, more purposeful, and more committed to helping families find their way, financially and personally. This is a conversation about legacy, love, and what it truly means to live a life well built. This is actually rolling.
On the very first day of the Ritz opened, it was December 5th. I don't remember the year, 85, I think. We ran the very first program. Back then, we used to run huge conferences. We get 400 or 500 people because, everybody was new to the area.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do with estate taxes were huge.
Yeah.
A lot of big family businesses. So I remember, we're all set up, and back then, the gorgeous tea, all the silver, and the men were in, I think, tails, and they were in white gloves, right?
Yes.
And I walk into the room, and there's 500 spots set, and they have the beautiful blue glasses. They just look gorgeous. And then I noticed the tag was still on them. So they had not been washed.
Wow.
Within instant, boom, they had like 25 people in the room taking all the glasses out, washing them, whatever. They got them back in by the time the first person walked in the door.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting there, we're talking about the national deficit back then. And all of a sudden, there's a huge crash. And someone had dropped a huge tray of glasses being put into the washer or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so then that was fine. We kept going. And then we had a fire alarm go off. So all of us had to come outside.
Oh, my gosh.
And, you got to wait for the fire trucks and do all that.
Yeah.
And, but we only lost 2 people, and everybody else came back in for the rest of the program. But I'll never forget how elegant, how beautiful, because up to that point, we really didn't have anywhere we could collect a crowd. The beach club, but that was booked.
Right.
You really couldn't get in there. I don't
yeah.
remember ever running anything at the beach club. We had to go to the depot back then or things like
depot,
that, before it was a museum. And
there were no facilities for that at all. No.
Nothing was big enough. You couldn't do it.
No, they were the first because the registry wasn't there yet. That was the registry came after, or whatever it's called. It used to be called the registry, right? It's the Grand or whatever.
Well, that's how I remember, because I remember reading the prospectus for a client that was thinking of investing. And, when I went through it and I said, you don't want to do this. You realize you'll put your entire net worth, your entire balance sheet at risk, because they're asking for general, not limited liability, but general liability with any investor in the original prospectus. And I said, they're also counting on, it was like a 98% occupancy level year round. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was, for anybody who lived in Naples, they knew that wasn't going to happen.
Right? Yeah, 98%. Oh my gosh.
We did not get involved, thankfully.
Yeah.
Thankfully didn't go that route. So. Yeah.
Wow.
But Naples was a small town back then. Like, you came in 80, right?
77.
77.
Yeah, he
okay,
opened in 80. He opened here because he was here for a few years before we opened.
So you really saw what it was like back then, too.
Yeah.
I know my sister was the first one to move down with my parents shortly after. And she was a dancer and, loved the arts and came down to Naples. Couldn't get any tickets for the only cultural thing back then in the arts was Naples Players.
Oh, that's
They just weren't available. You couldn't
the
get
Naples
in.
Players at the Contiki maybe or somewhere on Goodlit. Yeah, Naples Players. I remember it was
Yeah. So she said, I'd get teardrop letters, right, Rob? And she'd be writing me saying, "There's no, performing arts," and so she started what now is known as the United Arts Council, but back then it was the Fine Arts Society. where she says, I'm going to collect performing and visual artists, and we're going to all get together, and we're going to try to grow this thing and grow our community. And
Your
she's
sister started that?
yeah,
No
yeah,
kidding.
yeah. They actually just honored her like a year ago for it. But yeah, she started it. Passion. She was all about passion.
Yeah.
She would get everybody involved because anybody in the family who got into anything, we're all into it, whether we want to or not.
Yeah.
You know, I knew nothing about dance. I don't know how to dance. She used to take me to all these master classes in New York.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand her for that, but I did it. But anyways, yeah, she started bringing in like Miami Ballet and back then, what was the other one? Elf and Ailey, something. I can't remember the names, but she'd bring in all these performers and we would do it at Laley High School.
Wow.
And one day, my brother-in-law and my dad are sitting there. And my dad, because they were all sitting waiting for the performance to start. And my dad looks up and he says, boy, that couch, that set's really nice, but it looks really familiar. And Lou looked at him and he said, Pops, it should. It came from your living room. I mean, back then we had the mayor of the town. We had, John Cardillo. I mean, go through all the
Cardillo,
names,
yes,
Bert
yes.
Saunders,
Yeah,
Pasadamos. I mean, everybody was rolling up their sleeves, taking off their jackets after the performance and loading the trucks to take
gosh.
because we didn't have enough money to pay somebody to put together all of that. We
Right.
did everything, from scratch.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yeah,
and then
those
that's
are the
how
days. All those names you bring up too, the Cardillos, Pasadomos.
Yeah. Well, Myra Daniels, my sister, made me move out of my apartment. I had a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment. She made me move out because Myra, she wanted to get Myra involved, and Myra wanted to start, I think it was the Classic Chamber, Markle Classic Chamber concerts then. So they wanted to bring artists in the winter, of course, which is our season, from Chautauqua, but no money. I mean, they were just starting the nonprofit. There was
Yeah.
no money to fund it and that. So they said, well, if you move out for 3 months over season and go live with your sister, then we can afford to house the artists. Now all we have to do is pay their flights and, get
Yeah.
them down here.
Yeah.
So that's how I met Myra Daniels. Is she made me move out of my apartment for
No
3
kidding.
months.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Oh, your roots
Yeah.
with her. That is so
Working
cool.
with Deb. Well, they probably crossed paths, but that was a long time ago when Debbie came down, like 50 years ago. And she, she taught dance. I think it was at Cambier Park first. And then, then when they built the Phil, we dug the shovel for that. And she then did the Nutcracker program for many, many, many years. And finally, every year she'd say to Myra, I'm done, hire somebody else. And
Yeah.
she'd say, no, Deborah, she'd call her Deborah. You have to do it. But we
Was she a
finally
part of
stopped.
that ceremony, the shovel ceremony?
Oh, we were very much a part. I had actually that whole event, and we put up the tent. And back then we would be dressed everybody dressed up to attend
Always.
something, and
Yeah.
would be dressed in a beautiful suit with a hat.
Yeah.
And so the shoveling party was most of our clients actually at the time that
Wow.
we introduced, and then we bought a row of the center 4th row, that whole row of seats to help support, obviously, and had those for many years. I still have some. But
See, that's kind of
anyways.
fascinating to me because that's a big part of our that was another
That was
one
a
of those
huge
things
leap.
that made a big difference for us. Yeah.
And I'm sure I don't know if you went to her, I mean, it took them a long time, but when they celebrated her at the Phil long after she had passed, you know, some of the stories that were told about how she just kind of did what you did when you wanted to be a DJ, right?
Yes.
So she just kept, saying to the the builders that she wanted and the plot of land, and this is what needs to go here, and this is what needs to happen, and this is what we can and can't do as a nonprofit, and this has to happen.
Yeah.
She was just so.
She was unstoppable.
Oh,
That
yeah.
woman was amazing.
She was
what
a
she did here.
dynamite force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you were a part of all of that too.
Oh,
It was
such
very
great
special.
people back then. I mean, many are still here, but many are gone as well. And it's like losing family.
Right.
But you
That's what it feels
see
like.
the difference they made in our community just by having a passion. I mean, look at Kristen Curry. Look what she has done with Gulf Shore Playhouse. And,
Same thing.
started out and, it was not that easy, and there's no money and even building the audience and, of course, no facilities really. And what are you doing? Look at us today.
Yeah.
Right?
I know. And what that brings and what they bring to our community with those visions that they have that has made such a big difference.
And it was hard in the beginning because nobody really wanted to invest in Naples. All of their charitable funds, because we did a lot of charitable work for our clients. That was very meaningful for many of them. But much of their support went back home because that was still home.
Yes.
This was their 6-month domicile and their residence,
Right.
and they loved it and they touted to their friends about it, but they still gave back home and made the differences back home. And so we got very involved in saying, this is your community. Your children are now coming into the community as adults.
Yes.
They're wanting to move in. It would be good. It would be a gift of giving, basically, to give back to our community.
Yeah.
Because this is where you spend 6 months a year.
Yeah.
And the same thing in healthcare, because we didn't have good healthcare back then.
No.
It was terrible.
No. Yeah.
So,
And
but
I
today
didn't
it's
think of that.
amazing.
The people who were here, the giving, because they were only here part-time, to how to have them give at both, because they're
We
such a
had
big
to
part of it.
build that sense of community, because there were the business people, or the people, small businesses, the people that worked in the community
Yes.
that said, oh, it would be nice if we had this and we had that. And of course, some of the early supporters, their support was for the arts, because they wanted arts and culture. They wanted what they got back home in Chicago or
Yes.
New York or
Yeah.
wherever. So there was great support in that area, but there wasn't much support in other areas. I mean, mental health facilities, senior citizens, Alzheimer's, things like that.
Yeah.
Any kind of handicap situations, very hard to find any resources or services like we could in Philadelphia or Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It all had to be built or created, because we didn't have the infrastructure, the airport, the sports teams, or any of that other stuff.
The airport was on 41, little tiny airport, and we'd see the cows as we drove up there,
Yes.
right? And then when the
Yeah.
cows disappeared, you knew they were
You're
going to put a
getting
building.
there.
Something
Yeah.
was going to happen, It was kind of exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, back when I remember, the mall had just opened, I think, at the time. But anything, we lived in Vanderbilt, which at the time was way out there.
Oh, yeah.
Anything north
Yeah.
of Pine Ridge Road was like, where are you going?
Oh, yeah.
And you go north of Bonita Beach Road, and you're really out there. Like that was
Oh, of
another
course.
world. Even
Yeah.
in '97, when we opened the promenade, to open across the Lee County line was, what are you doing?
Big deal.
that's
Wow,
what-
you go. Yeah. Wow, you're going to Lee County.
Right.
Right?
It was such a thing to cross that road, and there was a store called Great American something where they sold jeans in Fort Myers. I remember driving there for school. At whatever time, August, we go to Fort Myers to get our school, do the school shopping at this jean place, wherever it was. But it was such a drive to go up there in the airport.
When I first moved down here, we had to send most of our, I was still traveling to different areas where we had business and offices and going to New York a lot. So, I had winter clothes. Well, there wasn't a dry cleaner that would take them and do any decent job. I mean, Jerry's was the first one
Jerry's,
that
yeah.
finally we had a dry cleaner
Yeah,
here. So we used to ship our winter clothes and my suits in that, good suits, up to Buffalo, back to Buffalo to
Wow.
be dry cleaned.
Is
Isn't
that
that
right? Really?
insane?
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, there wasn't. So much has changed, but at the time, Naples, like the Jeans Fifth Avenue florist was the florist. They were here forever, and
That's where my grandkids worked a lot of years putting up all the Christmas lights and the Ritz flower arrangements and
Yes.
all that. And every year my son-in-law worked for Jeans, so he would,
is that right?
he would
Really?
get the whole family involved because they needed people to get it up quick, especially downtown Fifth Avenue,
Yeah.
and all that during the holidays.
Yeah,
so.
they were the things. Yeah, you're connected in every way. Your family's got tentacles all over. That's so cool.
Well, we got involved early on with Special Olympics because I had a handicapped aunt and we wanted her to live here with us. So we had bought her a villa. She could, she was very slow, but she knew that kind of. So she couldn't function or live on her own if she had to pay bills or do things like that. But otherwise, she was capable of doing that. And for many, many years, we all tried to support that as far as the family that was here. The five of us were here at the time, full time. And we finally had her moved up north to a home, basically, that had maybe 12 guests, I guess, in it, 12 residents. And the purpose was because there was no job market for her. There was nowhere she could go. David Lawrence hadn't quite built out that at that time.
Yeah,
and
right.
so, but up in outside Buffalo, they had all kinds of things. So she was able to go to work. She was able to go to functions with people who were very similar to her that she could enjoy.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting very involved in Special Olympics back then and then trying to broaden that, obviously, and bring some of the services here locally that we didn't have.
Yeah, so you've always worked with some aspect of, because how do you pick philanthropy-wise? Like, how do you pick what you're going to do? There's so many. I look at our there are so many events that happen in Naples, which are raising funds
Constant, yeah, sure.
which is great, which is why we never say no when people ask for something for their organization. You know, we're happy to give because there's so many great ones to do things for in this
Yeah,
community.
it's made our community. I
It
mean, we have
has.
a lot of charities. Years ago, we only had a few, not a few, but there was maybe 40, if probably less, because when we first hired my sister, she had graduated from Potsdam with a degree in economics, and she was like, well, I don't know yet what I want to do with my life. And we said, whoosh, grabbed her and said, okay, while you're thinking about it, you're going to work in our offices for the summer, and you're going to become the charitable liaison. And so we used to bring together the different charities to kind of learn from each other
Yeah.
and do sessions to teach them about the importance of fundraising, the importance of endowments, you know, because most of the charities that we had back then had developed by a singular person or a small group of people. And
Yeah.
it was very much kind of a hands-on and resourceful relative to volunteers in that, but they didn't know how to raise money to support and to sustain.
Yeah.
You know, which is critical, obviously.
Oh, so you brought another dimension to the organization. Like, I didn't even know there was a need for it. You know, like they
Oh
gotta
gosh,
exist.
yeah. Back then, yes, we
Yeah.
were a very different, you know, very different community. And from a business standpoint, when we started, we used to run educational programs. We do the CE training for attorneys and trust officers and CPAs, and you know, because we're starting a business from ground zero. What do you do? Who do you work with? How do you learn? And to me, you learn by forcing yourself to get out there in the community and do things. And plus, I think I mentioned earlier that, you know, the age of my clients, they were teaching me. And so
Yeah.
really, when they started looking, for example, for retirement communities or resources, if they needed someone in the house. And so, you know, every summer, I would go out and visit every single, you know, new community that went up, every organization that offered services that they then could use. So that I could somehow network the two. That was the idea, is I've got to learn in order for me to know what's available and be able to provide the resources.
Well, being in a family business, how or who at the time made the ultimate decision? Because family business number one is you know, its
Oh,
own.
who ran the business and who was Ray and I. Ray and I started the business. We grew up, you know, we have 7 siblings. I have 3 older siblings and 3 younger, and each of them are a year apart. My mom had 2 miscarriages on both sides of me, or we would have had more. They tried to adopt, and the Catholic Church said, well, you can still have children, so we can give you foster children. And they did not want to do that because they felt here they would bring someone into the family, and us, the children, would learn to love them as family, and then they leave.
Yeah.
You know, so she never did that. So we just had the 7 kids. They would have kept going. But Ray and I always had an interest in the business. Ray was actually the youngest licensed, back then it was called NASD. It's FINRA today. But he was the youngest licensed representative at 17 before there was a requirement to be of age, of 18 or over.
Wow.
And he put himself through college, actually, selling mutual funds.
No kidding.
And it
Really?
was interesting because when he got together with his counselor or whatever, they said, well, maybe you should go to a tech school because I'm not sure, you know, he wasn't that great in school. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you should take a career up going in this direction or the other. And meanwhile, you know, when he talked to my dad said to him, well, you are right now earning more money than the counselor that counseled you on what you should do for your career. So stick with it, Ray.
Yeah.
Take your passion and run with it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But Ray and I always worked as a team. The whole family works very well. We barely have to actually, sit down and discuss something. We do, obviously, but we intuitively think the same.
Yeah.
And we complemented each other. You know,
Yeah.
he's great. He's great with all kinds of people, and he's wonderful at what he does. And but he doesn't want to get licensed. He doesn't want to, take a lot of courses. He doesn't want to handle compliance and all the nitty gritty and details.
Yeah.
And I'm a stickler for that.
Oh,
So we worked
okay.
well together.
Yeah.
And then years later, as we were growing, and we were growing outside offices, and then you're expanding beyond the original senior planners in the firm. And my husband got sick. So I said, everything stops other than taking care of what I'll call our retail clients, the clients we're serving on the ground, versus advising other financial advisors how to do their business and stuff. And then my family stepped in, and they were wonderful because I had to leave the community. I had called NCH, and they said, there is nothing here in South Florida because there's nothing that we know that can help. So you're going to have to go on trials and things like that. So we went to Roswell Park in Buffalo. But during that time, my family helped tremendously. They started meeting with clients with me, things like that.
Yeah.
And when Dean finally passed, we talked about, well, what do you want to do? And they said, we like what you and Ray do. We said, okay, here we go. And that's really what created the so-called family business because it got everybody involved.
Wow. And when was that? When did your ex-husband pass?
1991, he passed away.
91.
Yeah,
He
he
was
was ill
young.
for a couple of years.
Wow.
And that's what got me interested in the healthcare side.
Yeah.
Because I originally started working with retirees. So that's the people I knew. That's who I hung out with.
Yeah.
I never, became a broker and encouraged people to put $2,000 a year away in an IRA. Or I didn't really learn the young person part of the business until later. So they had different needs, obviously, right? Different resources. But I forgot what you were asking me, Rob.
Well, I'm still
I should
stuck
stay away
on.
from the
I'm still
business
stuck.
thing, but
I'm still stuck on that. Like, so your brother.
Oh, right. How we handled the business. Yeah. So, as the few years went by, like I had a brother-in-law, he wanted to open a restaurant down here. And when we did our homework, because we were in the restaurant business up north, when we did our homework, there was nothing that made sense. I have a feeling it was funny money running through most of the properties and businesses.
Yeah.
So we said, Lou, why don't you come to work for us? You'll kind of handle what I call the wholesale side of the business or the other advisors that we're working with. He ran the insurance agency for us and managed the office for us initially. And so that's how we began there. And then Paul said, I really want to be in the business. He was actually up in Tampa going to school. And we said, well, okay, pick an office. Naples, Rochester. Rochester snow, Naples sun. Where do you want to go? You pick Naples, though he did go up to Buffalo actually at the time. My brother-in-law, Tony, was involved in the business and had his own company up there in Buffalo. And he decided too, I want to do what you do. He did investments. And he said, I want to understand the planning side because we've always been grounded in planning. That was the big thing. What kind of financial decisions do you make? So he was the last to join us. And Jill, I told you, she came out of Potsdam and said, well, I'm not sure yet. And we said, okay. And then she stayed. And so Paul joined us, Jill joined us, and both of them spent time in the other offices as well,
And where are they you and they in the birth order?
So birth order would be, well, first Kathy, my sister, Kathy Curtolo. Then you have Debbie Clementi, who started the fine arts. And then you have Ray, we started our own business
the first
together.
boy.
And what actually happened is we both had a love and wanted to do this. I was either going to do international law or the financial side, the business, the planning side. And so I decided I wanted to get into planning. But that was back in the later 70s.
Yeah.
So at the time, I was looking for someone to go to work for. There was a Merrill Lynch, a Raymond James office, a penny stockbroker, a retired CFP that kind of worked a little bit, and that was about it. I mean, there really wasn't what there is today.
Yeah.
So when I went to interview, and I was offered a job by Raymond James, but they really didn't want to go the full licensing. They didn't want to pay the same that they would pay. And I wanted to do planning, and they didn't want any advisor to do planning because they felt it was too large of a liability. So I went to IDS, which became IDS, American Express, and from there. And it was in Fort Myers, small office.
What is IDS?
IDS, American Express, was a financial firm. It's now American Express. I think it's under American Express now. But they used to do planning. They do a basic plan for somebody, and then, they'd become a client, and they would invest in their mutual funds back then. And after about 3 months, I said to Ray, because I said, this is going to take me forever. I know nothing, and the person training me, I love him, but he doesn't know anything on the planning side either. And so we met in Atlanta, and Ray said, why don't you come to Rochester. We have one of the best regional managers in the whole IDS, American Express system, Roger Correa, I still remember his name, and come for a year, and then we'll start our own company. So I talked to my, then not my husband, but, we were engaged, and he said it was interesting because years later he said, I couldn't say no. It was your passion. It was your love. When you asked me, should you do this? What would it entail? Could we see each other on some weekends,
Yeah.
And I moved up there, and then Ray and I were working for IDS. And then after really a few months, we said, you know what? We know how to run businesses. We know this industry because my dad took the step forward to teach us all this stuff every Saturday morning for years. We sat down as a family. So we ended up tramping through the snow, borrowing $5,000 from my dad. I'm very nervous about it to begin the company.
Yeah.
We paid it back like 6 months later because we couldn't stand having it to owing anybody anything, But that's how we began the company. And then I returned to Naples, started it as a Florida company, but went to Rochester to open the first office. Then came back and opened Naples. And then that's where, everybody joined us from there. And Debbie used to do our marketing, and Kathy would do our writing, and Louie ran the agency side and managed the office. And then Tony, who's also a brother-in-law, came down and got into our business, sold his company. And I had another brother-in-law who unfortunately has since passed away that was in the business. And I have nieces, granddaughters, daughter, nephews, in-laws, sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So, but we have 50 employees totally between the two offices. So, we have a lot of non-family that have become family.
Of course, yeah.
And we had a dear friend who had an office in Clarence, New York. And she said, I want to do what you and Ray do. How do I learn it? And I said, well, either go to Rochester or come to Naples. And she chose Naples.
Yeah, easy sell.
So that's Lynn Farina, and she's been, involved in a colleague and a partner of our firm forever, for a long time.
Was it always natural for your siblings to be able to keep the sibling part out of the interaction, the business part of it? So like what was it like at home with you and Ray? Like, how did you handle disputes at home growing up? What was that like?
You know what? Well, growing up, we'd have hair pulling and punching and all that kind of stuff,
right?
like typical siblings, of course. Ray and I we always all connected well with each other. Not my older sisters at first, because I wasn't of an age they wanted anything to do with me,
Okay, yeah.
But I was always ahead of my time. Like I graduated early. I only did up to my junior year, and then I left for Boston College. And so I was always, I guess, more mature, probably because the exposure my father gave me when I was a young girl.
Yeah.
And I was always around his salesmen, and, they called them salesmen back then, not advisors.
Yeah.
But it was all the same. And so when, I don't know, we just always talked through it. We were taught to talk. I mean, every Saturday morning, both my parents would sit all of us down. I remember the family room there, and we'd all sit on the floor for the most part, and they'd be sitting there, and Dad would come up or Mom would come up with something that was important to talk about, whether it was what's a mortgage, and he'd go out and he'd buy a home and get a mortgage and give it to my sister Jill to manage so she could learn and understand. If we wanted to have a bike, like if we got money and we wanted a bike, he'd sit us down and say, well, if you bought a used bike and you saved this money that you'd pay for a new bike for so many years, you could have a horse. And if you saved it for so many more years, you could buy a car. What's most important? Saving it. And he teaches the rule of 72 and compounding money and all that. But so as we talked through and spent that time with our span of ages and asking our questions, we also talked about anything that was difficult or argumentative, or they would always make us sit down and work it out. And don't leave the room until you have it worked out. So I remember when I first started managing a restaurant up in Rochester called Artis. We took it from the ground up, basically designing the menus and all that. When my chef would argue with the waiters or waitresses, I'd say, okay, in the freezer, not in the cooler. That's too comfortable. In the freezer, don't come out until you solve it, because that's kind of how we were taught. So it's
great.
We make our arguments, and we figured that it was not to compromise on something was not the best road. We really had to determine what was the best solution and look at it that way. And when we were really young, I'll never forget some of the, the decisions you make when you're young. Should I take this job? Should I do this? Should I marry this girl? Should I not? Whatever.
Yeah.
He would take, at that time, a yellow pad, and he would draw a line down the middle. He'd turn it around us. We'd be sitting having coffee or pop or whatever.
Yeah.
And he would give us the pencil, and he'd say, write the pros, write the cons, see which list is longer. And so we'd do the same thing when we had discussions on the business. Should we do this or should we do that? And every June, we always got together and went through that. Were we doing the right thing as a company? Were we offering the right services? Do we need more employees? How do we want to run the business? What products, what investments? How do we want to handle clients' money? All the different decisions we had to make. We always revisited every year together. And then that grew as other family members got involved. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was, well, everybody's on salary, which is very unusual. We have always offered benefits, very unusual in our industry, very unusual to do planning back then. I am so excited where the financial area has come today because it's what people need. I'm glad they're doing the planning and the full services needed. So we would reevaluate that. And then if we couldn't agree, we'd use the old system. What's the pros? What's the cons? The old SWOT, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threat.
Yeah.
Not our opinion, but make our case.
Okay.
Tell me why you feel we should go in this direction.
Yeah.
Or why we should say no to this opportunity.
Yeah.
Why? And we always wanted to, well, I guess because it's embedded in the values we have on money.
Yeah.
So a lot of decisions wrap around that in one way or another. So you want to keep true to your values. And we felt that we're running serious money. We're dealing with people's serious part of their enterprise, of their family. So that we didn't want to go off in all different directions. When we first got involved, Rob, people were out there selling a lot of limited partnerships and things like that. And we looked at that and we said, we don't understand how someone can make money at that. And I probably shouldn't talk about these things because I have to go through compliance, so I'll get away from investments. But that was the profit base for companies back then, broker-dealer firms, anybody in the investment area. And we said, no, we want to be very straightforward, very foundational, make sure that someone has staying power. We followed the steps we were taught to financial independence, we follow in our business and in our guidance. So we just keep going back to that value and say, does this fit? Does it make sense?
Well, was there a point or a time period where you remember like that you saw it one way and your brother saw it another way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and some of the direction, I won't get into details of the business has taken, we had a difference of opinion how we should run our licensing. Should we be duly licensed with FINRA and the SEC because we're SEC licensed? Should we just hold one or the other? And that's been an industry-long kind of argument with advisors for a long time, ever since we got in the business. So at one time it was, no, we should keep that BD affiliation and keep that going. And, but we've had differences. But what generally happens, because of probably a common vision, we are so connected in our philosophy of the business that ultimately we make the right decision and we agree to go in that direction. We agree to disagree on things as long as you agree that you have different viewpoints on something, but then you've got to make a decision because you're leading a company, you're leading everybody out there that's working for you and for your firm and for your clientele. So,
it's so rare to last over time like that because so many partnerships just don't work.
Rare. Yeah. Very, very, and we understood that. Yeah. And again, if my parents hadn't grounded us the way they did, I mean, I am best friends with every one of my siblings, and I'm very close to all of our family. We all are. We're all best friends. In fact, there was a time when we said, okay, we really need to go out and get some separate friends. This is crazy. We travel together. We work together. We're always together. We're dining together.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That was back in the day in Naples. I don't know if you remember this, but we only had a few restaurants you could really go to, right?
Yeah.
So someone would drive by, like we'd end up at, I don't know if you ever ate at Mancini's back then.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You remember Mancini's when it was on 41?
Yes.
And it's still functioning, but obviously the original folks aren't here anymore. But so we would drive up and park and go in and say, give us a table of 2. And he'd say, no, I'll give you a table for 4. I said, no, we're on our own tonight. Before you know it, there'd be 8 or 10 or 12 people because they'd drive by and they'd see your car.
Yeah.
And they'd say, oh, let's go in there and have dinner with the Ciccarellis, you
Yeah.
know? I don't know if you remember those days, but
Yeah.
everybody knew everybody.
Everybody did.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was, my father used to, in the corner building when they had opened the salon there, because we were there for 10 years, he was in that corner window and he would watch everybody leave every day, the Spanos, the Gargiulos, and whoever, he knew. He'd watch them leave in the morning to go to work or where they were going, beat the horn. And then they would stop on their way home in the salon. And Bruce D. and David Sexton were, CPA was up top, and David, the lawyer from Bond, Schoeneck and King.
Yeah.
On the second floor, and they would have their gatherings in the salon. And my father was at the time a beer connoisseur. Before the beer stuff, he would have these. He would just get unusual brands at the time because it was a big deal to have anything besides domestic. And this one beer they used to drink was called Orange Boom. It was this crazy name.
Where was that from?
I have no idea. I just remember seeing it in the
Sounds
salon.
like African or something.
Right, it does.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
And they would have these, their powwows. They'd get the Naples guys, whoever they were, Joe, Dr. Spano coming home from work or whatever. They'd have these little gatherings in the salon and bleed over into wherever else in Naples. But those community. Well, in fact, we just lost one of the original crew, Vin Di Pasquale, who just passed.
Yes, I know. I saw that.
Yeah.
I know.
He's one of those old
absolutely.
mainstay.
He's a good guy. Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. What an incredible operation. A great person.
My mother, when she was sick, she had cancer. She died young at 57. And
I'm sorry.
she was in the last years of her life. Thank you. We knew she was, not going to be around much longer. And her friends put this trip together for her to go to New York. But at the time, she was getting treated for the cancer had metastasized to her brain.
Oh,
so she was losing mobility and unable to walk. And she felt she would be too much of a burden to go. But Vin insisted that she go.
Aww.
And this was kind of the last hurrah for her. So they went to New York. They saw Dame Edna, which is that she's a comedian type crazy comedian that my mom thought was real funny. Anyway, they went to see her. They stayed at her name was Jane. I don't remember her last name. They owned the hotel, whoever it was. Another friend of hers. And this celebration that she had, but Vin carried her throughout most of the trip. Picked her up, carried her, made her feel safe and comfortable.
Isn't that amazing?
He was just
See how he treated friends and the people in the community.
Yeah.
Just
really forever grateful for him for celebrating my mom that way, and
it's beautiful
dignity and just
absolutely
just a special thing. And
what an
so
incredible thing.
He's one of those old school guys who's was here at the beginning back in those days. And,
I don't even know when he came, but it had to been. It was earlier than us, so it had been a long time ago.
Yeah,
so
he was before the crew. Yeah. So the Naples roots, as they grow. But the Italian way and the Italian family, because you were raised that way, to be able to have that many family members, working together over time.
I know. And in my industry, in our industry, a financial world, you don't see partnerships last that long ever.
Yeah.
And the one thing we vowed is we would never let that split us. So, for example, if somebody didn't want to be a part of the business, or if they, like when Lou retired, and we spent like 2 or 3 years retiring Lou out of the business, because he was going to retire, and Debbie and they were heading up to Chautauqua Institute to spend all summer there. They spend from May till September. But so we always talked about, and the beginning of every meeting we have, we go around the room and we say, what's your personal goals? How are things going? Where do you see yourself? Whatever. And if somebody had, a vision that was different than participating in the business, then we would work towards it. But I don't know. Everybody loves it. Now, they love other things too. They've developed passions over the maturity of being in the business. So like my sister Jill also started a not-for-profit, but they run a podcast called Spell Life. And they used to run big programs down at Telford and on women's wellness and stuff, Okay. But she loves doing those kinds of things and coaching. And so she breeds that into the work she does as an advisor, But I don't, we have our arguments, but I think the best part of it is we know each other. We are very honest about how we think and we feel. And we have such a high respect for that integrity and respect for each other. that if we didn't have that, we probably would have broken up a long time ago because
Yeah.
every family has differences. Every
Yeah.
person has differences.
Yeah.
And where do you see a partnership that goes 40 plus years, 45 years
It does not exist.
You know,
Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
don't see it.
And through the changes, we have had massive changes that we've had to adapt to and
Yeah.
make,
Yeah,
you know,
and
in our
continue to
industry.
evolve. Yeah, you've gone
Yeah,
through so many
absolutely.
changes.
And you know, at a time we were always climbing uphill because like I say, when I would be called in for like a compliance thing with another firm, you know, they call in expert witnesses, whatever they want, a group of peers. And I would sit with the regional managers of all the brokerage houses and they said, we're never going to get into planning. You know, we're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
So we were always fighting the battle for fee advisory services, you know, initially involved very early on with like a Schwab custodian. And everything was uphill because even the SEC didn't understand what we were doing being duly licensed. And, you know, they were used to big investment firms or whatever, not a planning office that also ran investments. So, but today it's different. Today, you know, that's evolved. But we said we want to go with the flow. We don't want to be the first or second out, but we do want to be within the top 5 of where you have to take your business, where you have to vision it to.
Yeah.
You know, so today it's an interesting world to determine how do you go forward in providing full services.
Yeah.
You know, but we've been doing it since day one
Yeah.
for how we work. But for other firms, it's really harder. For an individual, it's hard to get into this business. It'd be very tough.
Well, you talked about communication and how you communicate in one of the settings. You put everybody together and ask their goal. Did you always have a structure like that, or did Jan implement some of that?
Oh, Jan had a lot to do with it. We, at one time when we were growing, as I mentioned before my husband got ill, when we were growing outside advisors, let's say, like we had in Fort Myers, we had built a building and we housed 6 of top advisors from different brokerage firms because they wanted to do full planning. They wanted to do the work we were doing back then. So we helped them, you know, get started. Back then, we always had our meetings with them. In fact, I remember when Bonita Bay was just getting built, and of course, they built the clubhouse first. So we used to rent the space from them and do it there, and they'd all fly in and come in. And we would bring Jan in to facilitate that after, I'm trying to think, we re-met because I knew Jan many years ago, and he knew my husband, and I knew his wife. I'm trying to think when we actually formally got him involved was when my name came up in Fort Myers with the advisors there, and he wanted office space, you know, and I said, okay, here, you know, maybe let me consider it. And he said, no, I want to provide value for it. And here's the work that I do now. I'm a consultant, and, you know, he went through all that, and I said, okay, we could use that. So I'll give you this office space in Fort Myers for you providing these services for our advisor gatherings, because we would network with even our competitors or our peers from around. We'd come together to have a meeting to talk about challenges or opportunities in our line of work. And so Jan facilitated all that for a long time. Gosh, I don't know when that started, but it was a long time ago.
Was that common to do that, to pull people?
No,
competitors
not in our business at all. No. Most partnerships in our business back then, and probably even today, were built on let's share office space. So you pay this much of the utility bill, I'll pay that much. But they really didn't have an organization. They didn't have a firm. For an advisor to have a firm principle in where we started just doesn't happen. You either go to work for a large brokerage firm or trust company or whatever, or you're in your own business, or maybe you invite somebody in to share expenses. Well, we never treated it that way. We also never said, I own this client. This client can only talk to me, which is when you deal with someone in the industry, you have your person and that's it. And they don't want you talking to anybody else.
Right, yeah.
We always said, no, we'll all play a part in serving that client. Now you have a primary advisor and a secondary, but what if that particular family had a business enterprise or a family business and needed, you know, maybe a transitional work of selling the business or just restructuring it?
Yeah.
Well, we have certain people in the firm that are really good at that. Or charity work. I love charitable planning, so I would get involved with that with, you know, whether Paul was serving the client, whether Jill was serving the client, or another advisor. So we always worked together. We got to know every single client all of us. So if somebody walks in the office, they're greeted by all different advisors, whether
Yeah.
they're their client, relationship or not.
Yeah.
But that is highly unusual. It's a
Yeah, I'll
dog
bet.
eat dog kind of industry.
Sure. Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah. Well, but the client gets served so much better because they're getting all the minds together.
Well, we want it, our tagline is our family to your family. I mean, basically, we want it. We're a family. We're a very strong family. It doesn't come easy to communicate and, be in business together all these years.
Yeah.
So you got to work at it. And we found that there were not a lot of functional families when it came to money or being in business together.
Right.
They just were not, my dad made it his mission, and my mom, to teach us about everything that could help us find our way on our own independently if we had to, from being financially sound to making the right decisions, the right life choices.
Yeah.
I think we were talking earlier when my dad taught us about retirement. I'm not so sure I like this or not, but he taught us that it's your choice. If you get to the point in life that you are doing what you choose to do, you're retired. What does retirement mean? Retirement doesn't mean, in Buffalo, it meant, okay, you retired from Bethlehem Steel and you sat on the porch and you died.
I
I hate to say it, but that's, people die very young.
Yeah.
And you spend your winters closed in your home together and, that kind of thing. He never taught us that retirement was a kind of a end date. Kind of thing. So.
Yeah. That's interesting because, I think there's always that question. Well, when are you going to retire? And because retirement to me does mean that. That's what it means. It means you're stopping your passion or whatever it is that you're about and sitting on a porch, waiting for what?
Yeah, exactly. So retirement might mean that you invite other people into the company to help you run the business side. So maybe you can focus more on helping mentor, that next generation of advisors, which is terrific, and that's a fun part too, not just helping families, but mentoring those that will help those families is terrific. And I love working with the young people in our industry. So that's kind of neat. But.
How did you find the fit for having that type of office that is so different that you all share the client experience? The client gets all of you, because people coming from outside, because it's very much like that in this industry, in the hair industry. Like you are my client.
You're my client, and you do it very differently.
Very differently, right? So where you're going to get the person who's best for, and the internal referral you'll even have, because if one girl doesn't do pixie cuts real well and somebody wants a pixie cut, I'm sure she could do it, but it's not going to be to the level that somebody, she's a little better. If you want blonding, I'm great at it. But it's very hard for people to grasp that because the industry's not built that way. Ours is built on, you're mine, you're my bread and butter, you're feeding me. And if you go over there, it's going to, take my dinner or take my.
Well, but and probably what drove you on that is your mission, your culture of family. How many hours do we spend at business, Rob, right? In our business and doing what we're doing and our team members. And so don't you want to love it? Don't you want to make it the best you can?
Yeah.
And why would you want to be a silo out there when it's so much better to be able to collectively work with others?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For the greater part of the business. So I don't know. That's always been the key vision of our company. And I will say that Jan had a very instrumental role in helping us to understand each other. I don't know if you've ever done a DISC assessment,
yes,
DISC.
Yes.
Okay, that, us getting to know that, hey, each of us have a certain personality and that's how we're always going to be. Learn to communicate together because you're all going to be different personalities. But we all come from the same values and family culture base. So I think that's why it works as well as it does.
Yeah.
But we've had, it's been an incredible privilege. My dad always said, if you have a gift, you need to share it. And I'd say, Dad and Mom, that your responsibility is to share that gift. So we had a particular gift, our family, because of the lessons they taught us early on, to work with families to a more advanced kind of degree, in the sense like when I first started here, having older clients who were doing a lot of estate work because taxes were very high, income taxes, excise taxes, estate taxes. We had to do a lot of planning. And what I would see is that people would see their attorneys, do some wonderful documents and all that. And then they would pass away and their family nobody ever bridged what they did, why they did it, why they chose to leave their legacy that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I found is, okay, they did the settlement of the estate, done, close that book, and then reopen and start all over with the family members. That made no sense to me. So I said, we've got to bring families together. And we started seeking out folks that did that kind of work or consulting with families to, because sometimes a parent may have an understanding that a child does or doesn't want to be in a business, let's say, or they think that one of their children would want to step up and be trustee for all the other kids, right? And then we come to the table when we do a family meeting, and in preparing for it, we talk to everybody individually, and we find out what they're really thinking. And their thinking could be totally different. So they would be burdened with their parent assigning them a certain responsibility that they don't want.
Yeah.
But nobody ever talks about it. So if you don't talk about it, you don't know. So now the parent passes away, and we're seeing this. We're on the 4th generation of clients we're serving. So when you see what happens in families and how it could have just been different if they just had come to the table and talked about it. So we find, sometimes you just got to deal with those hard things. But doing things like personality assessment, values assessments, providing a structured format to sit at the table together. I don't know any other firm, as small as we were, when we began, that actually had board of directors or had regular meetings where we always came together and spent time talking about us personally and business because it was so interconnected.
Yeah. Well, so you brought that to your clients the same way you did it in-house. So you opened up communication in a way that usually it's kind of tucked away. Like, the lawyer handled it, it's done. And then the real trouble comes after they do pass, and then you're dealing with, so many undelivered communications and so many things that nobody knows about. And that's where all the disruption and really is hurts the family in so many ways to not have that planned out or mapped out or whatever
Absolutely.
it might be.
It does. And sometimes it's the interpretation of what someone thinks occurred and why it occurred is totally different.
Very much. Yeah.
So we found we could help bridge the story by just, even if the parent didn't want to have a family meeting or talk through some things with their kids or in-laws, we had that history. So we could bring it to the table. I've had many, many clients who have written letters to their kids and they're locked in a safe box, in a sense, until they pass away because they just can't approach certain things right now or don't want to, and I understand that. If you're you're raised in a family, money's a tough thing because it relates to everything we do, every choice we make.
Yes.
Somehow comes to financial. So if, for example, you were raised in a family that never talked about money or only talked negatively about money or I don't have it or this or that, that's what you learn and that's what you take into your marriage and that's what you take into your children. So you really have to think about early on, what messaging are you giving them? What education are you giving them? And we say it's important to talk about money. You don't have to talk about specifics. You don't have to sit down with your kids and tell them what you're worth, or how much you earn. That's up to you. But you can talk about what it takes and why it's important.
Yeah.
And, it's important to make it unimportant, basically. Right? So you can concentrate on all your other priorities.
Yeah.
Whether it's faith, family, health, business, whatever would be your priority.
And you can do that with peace because you've handled some of that, the worry or the fear, or whatever the conversation is for me or
we find a
somebody
way.
else about money.
And that's where Jan was particularly helpful. Many years ago when I had several family businesses in the community we were working with, Jan came in to facilitate. They wanted me to facilitate, but I said, no, I can be that voice that the family needs to the communication regarding these money issues or these family business matters, whatever. But a facilitator, an independent facilitator should help make this happen. And he was just so good at that. So, we had fun in those early years.
He wrote for the paper as well, too,
He
didn't
did for a long time. And he wrote a book. I think he wrote 2 books, actually. And people still come up to him. It's kind of cute. I'll see women come up to him, give him a big bear hug. Jan, I haven't seen you forever. And I'm like, okay, I understand. He did some program at the company they worked for, We laugh about it, but he did.
I always look forward to his articles. I remember he and Clay Cohn were the 2 that I liked.
Yes, So you never read mine, huh, Rob?
I saw your name all the time. You were always there. Your name was always there.
A lot of those, I think it was like 14 years I wrote, but until, they took over and ousted all the local authors. But
Yeah.
when I wrote, it would be a mom or dad coming to me saying, I want to get this, I somehow want to communicate with my child about this, or I want to provide information, but they won't listen to me or whatever. And they'd give me a topic and I'd say, okay, I'll consider it. So that's how that would come about, because for some reason, when you see something in print back then,
Yes.
people would pay heed to it.
Yes,
So that's, I
yes.
would write based on what they thought they needed.
And
to
how did that come
communicate
about
on.
for you to be how did the
To
paper
write for
yeah,
the paper?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we actually did a TV show way back in the years called It's Your Money. And then we
I
just got
remember
so
that.
busy. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Was it Palmer or what was the cable
Yeah,
whatever it was?
yeah. And it was called It's Your Money, and we did it live, which was kind of cute because we used to play some games, talk about how brothers and sisters,
Yeah,
connect. We
yeah.
would do a little shocking thing when we'd invite another member on. Dave was great to work with, and the people we worked with then. But probably Jan maybe got me involved in that because I
Okay.
always liked to write.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was like a second passion that I enjoyed way back when. I'd love to get back to it at some point. We did write a book, but it was a long time ago. Started writing it right before my husband got ill, and I think we published it somewhere in the early 90s. So I think he was the one that said, you should sit with the paper and you should contribute. You should write a column. So
So you were
that's how that started.
yeah, you were it was you were sharing your passion through
Yeah, I was
writing.
writing for like different magazines or industry things because I
were.
served on a national board,
Okay.
advisory board. So, and I used to do speaking engagements with other companies, advisors and things like that. It was just something I enjoyed doing back then.
Yeah.
And, it's learning from each other, right? We still network and get together with what people would call our competitors,
Yeah.
but we call them our peers and colleagues. So let's learn from each other.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you can be harmed by sitting down and getting ideas from each other. I think you just make it better,
Yeah.
and that's how we felt. So,
We'll have to see if we can find some of those old clips, if any, are on YouTube of the show.
oh, geez. That
Yeah.
would be funny. I have all the old, what were they then? 8-track or VCR or whatever
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
the big
Beta.
ones.
There was beta first and then
Yes,
the VHS.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I came across some. My dad had done a ad at Palmer, an ad, a hair ad, and it's all the outtakes of. It's
Fun.
wild to see. Yeah, the hair and the.
Oh, gosh.
the
Yeah.
music
Out to
and the-
here.
Yeah, yeah,
the
the
teasing
hairspray.
days
Yes.
and the hairspray.
Yeah,
Been
yeah.
through all that. Mhm. I like it where you are now, what you're
Right.
promoting. That's good.
My father at the time, I remember his decision at this point was roller sets were still around. A lot of people were still getting roller sets. It was a generation of people that were aging, but they still held on to roller sets. And
Right.
and it was a portion of the 30% of the business was probably that. But it was a look that he said he didn't want to be known for that look because that was a look of the past.
Ah, okay.
And he said, I if people ask where they get their hair done, they're going to say Robert of Philadelphia, and they're going to think that's what we do, that type of look. So he made a decision at the time. I'll never forget this. We're burning the rollers. We will not do roller sets anymore. Even if they want, even if the customer wants it, we will
You're
not
not
do
gonna
it.
do it.
It was
Wow.
a roller burning party we had, where literally, which was scary for me at the time because that's a chunk of revenue. Like we're
Right.
saying no.
Right.
And upsetting a lot of people because that's the look that they wanted. And they're
Yeah.
going to have to go somewhere else. We're not going to do it. But he was willing to
Oh,
just
my
say
goodness.
that we're not
See?
doing that anymore. We're
Take
just gonna-
chances.
Yeah,
He saw
yeah.
a vision, and good for him.
Yeah.
Because, you got to live in the present and vision to the future. And if you can't do that, then how do you survive as a business?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you have
totally.
to be grounded in your traditions, right? And I'm sure
Yeah.
your dad had many of them.
Very much so,
But he
yes.
obviously had a good business head and
Yeah.
a good vision.
You could see what, others couldn't. And, for him to make that decision from the financial perspective, I was thinking this is going to really, that's our
Kill
bread and
us.
butter. They're
Yeah,
keeping
right.
us-
How do
keeping
you
us
do that? You're
busy.
sending it away
Yeah,
to the
that's what
competitor.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but he wanted a look. He knew this look was better for them. Less maintenance. They're going to look better. They're going to feel better. He just would always tell people that. And that was the other thing that he was excelled in was he wouldn't always do what they wanted. He would do what he knew was best for them. He would upset
okay.
people sometimes in the chair.
Yeah,
they
sure.
would say they wanted a certain look. He'd say, no, that's not going to work. Or he would do what he thought would make them look best. And, may not have been the direction that they wanted to go. But in the end, that was what he's known for.
It
Like, I'm going to
worked.
give you the look that you
Yes,
need,
exactly.
not necessarily
Yeah.
what you think you want. Your face is not the right shape for that. However
Because he
you
was an
look.
expert
Yeah,
at it,
yeah,
right?
that was his.
And
Yeah,
those are hard discussions to have. I mean, we
yeah,
have similar discussions. Everybody has a thought of what kind of financial decisions they should make or how they should invest or whatever. But
yeah,
if you know it's definitely not going to work for them, and the only way we knew that, it wasn't the textbook, it wasn't the industry that taught us that, it was our
yeah,
clients that taught us that. It was their experiences.
yeah,
So if you have, in the situation of, Roberts of Philadelphia, you have enough people walking out the door that even though maybe it wasn't what they asked for, but they loved it and all their
yeah.
friends comment on it,
Right.
that
was the
word
thing.
spreads.
Right. That was the thing.
And
Yeah.
then they know, okay, you may not do what they want, but you're going to do what's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a good reputation to have.
Yeah, it was his the visionary look of it all, the way he was and our Italian heritage, some part of that too.
How did Mom participate in all that, Rob?
So she was so when they opened the salon, the environment was a lot like our home was. It was like, come on in, we're celebrating. Whoever stopped by the house was welcome, and the house was open for them. Because people used to just stop by. Now somebody rings your doorbell, like, who's that?
Yeah, right. You don't want to answer. You look in the whatever you call that film thing or whatever,
right.
the photo.
Yeah. So we, but in our home, it was, always, come on in, we'll have food for you, always food for you. The cake that was on the counter wasn't for us, it was for the company that came over.
Right, you
that
couldn't
was.
touch it. Yeah. Because some moment there will be
Somebody
some company.
will be here. That's right.
That sounds right.
Every holiday, we always had people there. I had no clue who they were, but they were there.
They were there.
They opened their home up to everybody. And so the salon sort of was just an extension of that. It was literally like we're hosts to a cocktail party all the time. And she was the front of the house.
Okay.
Where she got to just celebrate humans. She loved people. She loved being with people. She loved the people that she met. And she was the host of the party.
Nice,
Is what it was.
So
And she loved, that was her role. So she was sort of because especially in those early days of Naples,
Yeah, right.
the events were dinners, the heart ball, the angel ball, the things that went on. There was the social part of, I remember my father, bought a Mercedes-Benz in the early 80s, which there weren't a lot of cars. Like, a Mercedes was the thing to have. Like, it was like a big deal to have a Mercedes. And the accountant, Bruce D, upstairs said, you're a hairdresser. What do you need a Mercedes for? Because he was trying to put it in the business.
Because you're not like a realtor taking people out in your car.
Right. What do you need? How am I going to justify this to the IRS? How am I going to say this to the IRS? My father said, well, we have to entertain. We have to see people. We have to go to places. I have to look the part. I have to look successful. And the big deal that it was then. But the atmosphere of the community, the way Naples grew with those roots of people and those events that were happening. In fact, he would sell one of the auction items that he would sell with Bill Barnett. Bill Barnett would do the cancer auctions and things like that.
Oh yeah, we were involved in that. Yeah, I remember.
He would, instead of just giving haircuts, what he would do, because he was a great cook, he was a phenomenal cook, he would sell dinners at his house, and he would sell like this feast that or he would donate that this we're gonna have this whatever lobster Italian marinara, whatever he would create, because he was just notorious for that, and he would sell dinner for 12 at the house, and so they would entertain,
raise money.
Yeah. So they would give that away versus the haircut, and it was so my mother and he both were sort of the, social, here's our family, welcome to the
That's
family.
probably what got the name out so much, because I remember when it kind of hit town, so to say, and the reputation, it was to be an experience above any other. It was not just walking in to get a haircut.
Yes.
I just remember that. So, he did it well. Whatever he was doing, he did it very well.
Yeah, it was exactly. Yeah, that was sort of the thing. Like, it was, you're a guest in our home. This is an event. This is a bigger deal than just, and now we still, like, to this day, we want to make sure that people get something that they didn't know they needed, but when they have it, their lives are significantly better. Yeah, like they can't describe it. So the experience is, if you're going to have 20 people love on you when you walk in the door, you're going to have 20 moments of love, like whether they're your client or not, but just the experience of being known, appreciated, loved, respected, just served for that hour, like a way that you got a level of love that we're just not used to.
Okay, I got to come tomorrow. Okay, you sold me.
If their hearts are in it, they really want to be here. And, in this day and age, it's, we talk about the different generations and how they are good or not good and, all the rest of that. But ultimately, finding people who are passionate about this business and being able givers, so that when people leave, they don't just, you're going to get a great haircut. That's a known. The technical part of it is going to be there too, but also you feel that internally, like the fulfillment that comes from, leaving the business is different than what, you just a commodity, just a transaction. So it's something that's special. And that was their way, that was who they were always, because whoever came to the door, whether it was at home or in the salon, they were a part of the family.
See, and we were always taught that too. It obviously being a family of 9, not everybody would have you over for a holiday meal, right? Because it was like 9 extra people at the table. We don't have room. Yeah. But we did have very close friends of my parents that did bring us over. And when we opened up to a holiday, like you say, having people you don't know at the table, but everybody was invited. And if you had a guest in, or you had a family member, or you ran into somebody who served you in a restaurant and didn't have anywhere to go on Christmas,
100%.
guess where you landed?
That's exactly
right there in our
exactly
home, right?
What it was. Yep.
And that was a beautiful, that really taught us so much, because it wasn't about telling us how to be a good person or how to open your home to people, but it was showing us, that's what we did. That's what they did.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
Yeah.
I remember when Jan first kind of became a part of the family, it was tough on him. First, we're a hugging family.
Yes.
Of course, we like to eat. We like to talk very loud.
It's all around
so,
food. Yes.
He really had to get used to it. But what was really tough to get used to was, that you leave. Well, I shouldn't say this. We don't anymore as much, but if, we either leave our houses open or anybody knows how to get in anybody else's house.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And in the early days, especially when we had no money, you're just putting everything into the business, and you got to attend all these fancy events. And we had Fine Art Society Ball, actually, was one of the first in the year of Ritz-Carlton. But I remember we couldn't afford to go out and buy a gown.
Exactly.
So we'd be mailing from other people's homes, friends or family members. Oh, I got a pair of earrings that'll go with it. I got a pair of shoes that'll fit you.
Yes.
And we put together our outfits. But as a family, the girls have always gone into each other's closets, because at one time we were all about the same size.
Yeah.
And our husbands, they really had a tough time with that, because they just come in, they might knock, but, they walk in and say, oh, I just got to get an outfit. Hi, good morning. I'm just going into Kim's closet. I'll be gone in 10 minutes. And they'd come out all dressed up and, but I guess they got used to it and realized that that's how we've always been. And what's beautiful? What's beautiful, Rob, is seeing our children doing the same thing. Their homes are open to anybody who wants to come, who maybe they have a place to go but prefer to come to your house, or maybe they don't and they want to come. And versus, some folks will say, well, the holiday is just the family, not her family or not his friend or not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
We never had to do that.
No,
and our kids grew up learning the same.
That's a beautiful thing.
Great.
That it's being carried on, because it was special and unique. And when we were up north, before we moved here, the neighborhood, almost everybody in the neighborhood, last name ended in a vowel. It was very predominantly Italian in this area for the most part. And everybody's home was everybody's home. Wherever you were, wherever you popped in after playing football or touch football or tackle, kill the guy with the ball, whatever we called it at the time, you'd go to whoever's home, and his mom or somebody in the family was there to, make sure you ate. You sit down and you eat, because our homes are open to everybody. But they, and now if we don't have somebody who, everybody's not wondering who are they. There's something wrong, because we always have, it's who it is. Whoever doesn't have somebody to celebrate with, because holidays, so much of our Italian culture was around holidays all the way.
Food.
Food, 100%.
Food.
All food.
If you don't eat, that's what's hard about going to Sperlonga, because you're constantly invited in to eat, and you can only have so many meals a day.
Right.
It's like, I'm done. Manja, come on.
No, it was. I know, because it's an expression of love. So you have to enjoy and appreciate the food, because that's how they're showing you their love. And if you don't...
Exactly. Yeah, you got it.
We have a friend, one of my mother's dear friends, who she went to elementary school with in Philadelphia, still comes down, and she's stayed in touch with us, which I'm grateful for, because she has so many great stories of my mom.
Nice.
She comes every year, and she cooks, this the meal closest to what my mother would cook, which hasn't existed since.
What date is this? So I write it down.
Yeah. They're usually here this time of year, every year. They're not here this year, which is very unusual. But every year we celebrate this, and she cooks this incredible spread of food, which is just a reminder of those days of mom's, mom making the sauce and You know, us being outside and her every Saturday lifting the lid off the sauce, and from outside you could smell the aroma, the garlic and the basil, and you knew the meatballs were about to be cooked, and you go in and steal some meatballs.
I'd
you
be
know,
standing on a little step stool over a very small, stove and oven that my grandmother would cook at.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very tiny.
Isn't
with
it crazy
4
how
little
they would do
burners.
that? I know.
And they
we
would
did.
cook these huge spreads
This
for
tiny
30
little
people.
kitchen.
I'm
Yes.
like, what?
Yeah,
How did you do this?
I know. I look at my grandmother's house. I see that now. How did you? And now these kitchens are bigger than some houses. And,
Yes,
and they're,
yeah,
she
right.
literally you couldn't fit 2 people, between they had like a little kitchen table, and then
Right.
the cooking area was here. But you couldn't, there wasn't much
made
room
it
there.
happen.
They did. In
They
that
made
little
it
tiny
happen.
Philadelphia row home that
Yep.
they cooked incredible meals out of. Just
Yeah,
beautiful.
our hometown where my grandfather came from, the apartment they lived in or whatever was 400 square feet, but they managed to do everything in there, and
Yeah,
the kitchen
yeah.
was like, I think it was like 2 by 2. I mean, really. And
Yeah.
the laundry, you open the window up, the shutters, and you had your line that you
Yeah,
pulled.
that's
and,
hung it out the back,
because
yeah.
they're way up top, high in
Yeah,
a building,
yeah.
Today we'd be penthouse,
Right.
So,
They call it that. Yeah.
yeah.
How is the world, not just the industry, the world changed? Because I noticed there's so many young people with uber wealth that wasn't able
Yes.
to be earned, 30, 40 years ago to become that wealthy. It took years of accumulation.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And now, a kid writes an app for a game.
And boom,
he's,
they're multi-millionaire,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And all
Yeah.
these young people, we just came from LA, and you see the people out there that, kids in my view right now, they're just uber wealthy.
Oh, amazing. I mean, we've had folks that, developed some business concept, sold it out for multi-millions, and then developed another business concept, but they did it all out of their home.
Yeah.
They've never left their home.
Yeah.
They've never opened a shop.
Yes, right.
Totally different experience, and somehow they make it happen, which
Yeah.
is amazing. Well, technology, where they're involved in technology, obviously, that's
Yeah.
a big thing. But, kids are schooled a little differently today, and they're very smart in certain things. But there's a lot of that basic stuff that, basic kind of things that go into decision making, and a normal thing that you learn over experience, over time,
Right.
over having mentors, and they don't want to take that time. And some of these folks have, like you said, made instant almost wealth. And but they don't have the experience backing it up on some of the things they should be doing. But technology today and AI, I mean, you can begin a business. You could do all your branding, all your business decisions, your spreadsheets, everything by just saying, okay, put together this
Yes.
for me. And all of a sudden your computer, or your telephone, forget, they don't work on computers, they're on the telephone
Yes.
or their iPads, and,
Yes.
creating that. And it's interesting because, like I had mentioned earlier, Rob, I started when I was very young. I was like 23, I think, when I started the business. And my clients were older ages. And I forgot. I forgot what I was going to say on that. But that you learn how long it took them, to develop a company or
you saw
become a
them, yeah.
CEO, or and that length, and the length of our learning to learn how we can serve others. I mean, there were years.
Yeah.
Our early advisors that we mentored spent years at learning what we did and how to do it and how to pass that experience along. But as we worked with these 4 generations, Mom and Pop were, let's say, your World War II generation. Very different and unique way of thinking. They also, all of them retired with some kind of pension.
Yes,
So regardless of
pensions,
what
yeah.
the stock market did, the kids saw that they had the same lifestyle, regardless if the market went up or down or the economy was, terrible or
tied to that.
better.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't tied to that. Then you get into the baby boomer generation where, of course, their parents wanted them to have more, have it easier, have it better. But those pensions didn't exist that much in that world at all. So
right.
they had to learn how to handle drawdowns off of whatever, funds they had built up. And so that baby boomer generation, and I don't mean to stereotype anybody, but pretty much when I served the World War II generation, every detail, every note, every number, I had to back up, I had to research, I had to prove, I had to do
Yeah.
spreadsheets. They'd come in with their big black books and track their stocks every week and, that kind of thing. And then when I started serving their children, who are now going into their 80s, but back then were maybe 60s, They were kind of like, I just want the key and I want to get in the car and I want to turn it on and have it run. Just go. I don't
Yeah.
really want to know all this stuff that makes it go. So
Yeah.
you take care of that. Just, I'll make the final decision, but you do all that. You do all the research, the backup, you execute. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be on the golf course. I want to be traveling, whatever. And then the next generation was kind of like, I can do it myself. I've got all this access. Now what's happening is the folks we're serving today that are younger, for the first time I'm seeing them come to us, they said, yeah, we've got all the technology. We have the AI. We're running a successful business. We're doing X amount, a year. I've built a significant net worth. But all this information doesn't guide me or advise me on what decision I should make.
Right.
I don't know what it's going to look like 5 years or 1 year or 10 years or 20 years down the line.
Yeah.
I don't know how to make a decision. I've just got all this data.
Yeah, there's almost
and I
too
don't
much.
even know
Yeah.
if I can believe the data.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for the first time, I am seeing this generation kind of thinking the way the World War II generation thought, as far as being involved and planning for their future and
Yeah.
planning for the way they want to raise their kids or expose them or whatever.
Yeah.
It's different. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
They want to know the mechanisms. They want to know what makes it tick.
Yeah.
I had not seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, there is so much information available.
It's too much.
Right.
It's hard.
Right.
Look at what one of our biggest issues is, as we get into healthcare and wellness, and we could talk for days on end on that, but, mental health and wellness and these young kids. But, if you're older and you learn to use AI or your telephone and do all these great things with it,
Yeah.
it can really enhance,
Yeah.
those
very
older
much.
ages and the quality of life and that. But
Yeah.
when you're starting out with these kids, from the time they can pick up a telephone, they've got a telephone and access to technology.
Yeah.
It's just
Instantly.
so much, and it is creating issues,
Yeah.
because they don't have the base fundamentals of growing up like you and I did,
Right.
So how do they get that? It's like overstimulation all the time,
Sure. Yeah. And not having to think through a problem. And if I came home from school and the door was locked and I didn't have my key, I couldn't text mom and say, "What do I do?"
Yeah, come
I
help
couldn't
me or do
call.
it.
There's
Yeah,
nothing.
right.
I had to
Nothing.
figure out how I was either going to get in the house or what I was going to do to occupy my time until that, solve the problem on my own.
Right.
There was nobody I could go to the neighbors and see if they can track her down. But literally, you were forced
to figure it out.
Figure out whatever
Absolutely.
dilemma you were in, whether you were at school and something happened at school where you.
And then you probably got a lesson on what you should have maybe done differently.
Of course.
Because maybe you didn't make the right choice,
Of course,
right?
yeah, yeah, and there was something to be said for that.
I remember a friend of mine getting arrested for breaking into his own home, but that was because that was his solution. I guess I just have to break the window and break into the house because mom and dad aren't going to be home till later.
Yeah,
And he got arrested because a
Really?
neighbor didn't know and
wow.
called about some guy breaking the window in the back of the house and trying
wow.
to get in.
Oh, my gosh.
Some kid. I mean, they obviously didn't complete the arrest once they knew,
no,
you
I
know,
can
who
relate.
he was.
Yeah, I
but-
did it because I had it happen. I came home and we lived in a stilt house in Vanderbilt and there's no key, couldn't get in, and I, in frustration, punched the window, which broke it. And cut my hand really bad. So I knew I would get in trouble for one, breaking the window, but also getting hurt. So I took my bike to my bleeding, got on the bike, took my bike to my friend's house, his mom was a nurse. And I was hoping she could,
good.
make it look good so I didn't get in more trouble. when I
Right,
got
so
home.
maybe they won't notice that I have my hand all wrapped up in the broken window. They won't notice that.
I don't have
You know,
to
the things
claim
we
it.
do as kids, I don't know.
There's no Ring doorbell to catch the evidence of it
Yeah.
anyway, but you had to figure out what you did. And that level of, even though they're all simple things, but they're part of problem solving.
They're
anyway. I
thinking.
think
They're problem solving. Very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And it was very much engaging with whoever you were with.
Yes.
And then consciously thinking through who you wanted to be with.
Yeah.
If you had a certain thing you were working on, whether it was in school and they were creating a team to work on something, or whether it was on your own in sports or whatever, you kind of chose folks to connect with. And sometimes you didn't have the choice and you had to learn how to work through it
Yeah.
and things like that. But today it's just different. And
Yeah.
a lot of that communication exists looking at a computer or on a text,
Right.
or,
Right.
and I'm not on Facebook. Jan's on Facebook, but he's never on. I'm on, but
Yeah.
I'm only on there because I want to I want to see what my grandkids are up to. I
Yeah.
like to hear,
It's
and
great for
it's
that.
too
It's
hard
great,
to
yeah.
stay connected when everybody's
It's great.
all over, right? So you
Yes.
can see and say, "Hey, great,"
Yeah.
and texting with them, it's perfect. They actually text back.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you call, they don't call back,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but we're blessed. They're very close. So again, their parents were all about family and engagement and siblings, and it's nice to see them even grow up as best friends and do things together.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little different, and I think the biggest, toughest thing, that I've seen in working with a lot of families is obviously siblings are all different, usually, right? Some
Yeah.
get along well, some don't. Sometimes there's a history with maybe someone was an alcoholic or a drug addiction, and you just can't get over that, even if they have,
Yeah.
changed their future. So you look at these things and you say, is there a way I can help? Is there something I could do or say? Because here I am serving their parents, and the parents are so, so interested in improving and helping their children,
Yeah.
but don't communicate. Can't communicate on a lot of things that they'd maybe like to, but they never had it communicated with them when they were older. So with their parents, so they just don't even look at that. You say, well, let me see what we can do. Can we just open the communication somehow so it doesn't all come out in the end?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what the parents don't want to happen,
Right.
But that's why I think I shouldn't say this, any family, but Italians have an advantage because we'll just yell and scream and talk
Yeah.
about it and try to get our point across, no
that's
matter
right.
who's listening,
That's
right?
right.
And so someone's going to hear it, whether we want them to or not.
100%. Yeah. For the youth that we have coming into the business and the generation that because we have, probably 5 different generations of people in the business at some level.
Right.
We've from 72 to 17 in age range wise. And so for this, younger generation that comes in, because each generation wants different things from work.
Of course,
They
absolutely.
wants, it used to be health insurance was something that our
Everybody
industry never had, and we wanted
Yes.
it. And in the 90s, it was like a big deal to have a health plan in this
Right.
industry. And now it's, it's secondary to the thought process because they're insured till they're 26 now anyway under their parents.
Right,
bosom.
right. So
it's
they
not-
don't
it's not
even-
something for a
yes,
job
right.
choice that matters or,
Right.
but I don't have a direct relationship with it, but I like to, we mentor and guide young adults to be successful. And what's important to me is that they become wildly successful in doing what they love, that they
Right,
love their career
right.
and they're happy doing it. So my role is to make sure that, I get everything out of the way so that you can be fully yourself and expressed in creativity and do what you love and you're passionate about. And that everything in life is fulfilled for you through our family. In other words, you're going to grow financially, you're going to grow emotionally, professionally, spiritually, in whatever way to provide a path for them.
Right.
So there's a mentorship and a guidance in a way. And around finance, I don't directly tell anyone what to do, but just that we do have a 401k and that, why it's, important because they don't think in terms of retirement or anything like that. But
They think in terms of what's in the check. But you know what's interesting? Like we just retired an advisor and some staff members that have been with us since day one when we didn't even afford a phone with a hold button. We had 2 phones. So we'd say, could you hold a moment?
yeah,
Hello, yes,
yeah.
good morning,
Yeah,
Ciccarelli
hold
Advisory
button.
Services.
Yeah,
That was our hold button.
Yeah.
But we have always we said, if we are here serving clients and we are not serving our family, our team members, our staff, our friends, then something's wrong. So we've always taken a very conscious role in doing that. And what I love is as we've developed this next generation of advisors, that they have actively taken that role serious as well. So every employee that we have, we talk to them about money in a sense. Now,
Yeah.
it's up to them how much they want to talk. But we said, look, first of all, no cost, whatever you want to do in savings. Secondly, we have a profit share. You are going to participate. If we are making a profit, you are going to participate in that profit share. That profit share is going to be put into retirement, meaning you own it as of a certain point. This point is I don't know what the months are, maybe 6 months or something. You're going to own it. But it's going to go into a deferred fund, your 401k. So we have always done the profit share. We have done the match on the 401k because we wanted them to understand about growing assets and security for the future, but it takes dealing with a planner. And really, it's more about the choices you're making. Should I pay this for a car or lease a car? Should I buy this or should,
sure.
can I afford this? Can I not? What great decisions are you making and what are you having a tough time with? So they get to select, every team member we bring on selects which advisor they would like to work with. And our advisors provide that advice and that time with that employee on a confidential basis. Regardless of what it takes, they're doing that complimentary. They're not getting paid to do that, but they all take it seriously. They love it and they really help. So when we see that we're retiring someone with, 6, 7 figures, that's only happened because we've tried to provide that proper mechanism and advice and didn't just pay it all in a paycheck, especially for somebody who's just beginning out in a career and not really understanding that. Though, fortunately, there's now finance programs that many kids are participating in a way that have some more real life kind of training to it than textbook oriented.
Yeah, we're I don't know where to go with this group, but just in hearing what are some things that you would share with not from a financial, just from a life perspective, but finance with a new group of recruits that are coming into Robert of Philadelphia about money, because there's no conversations about. There's no
you don't have any conversations on that but we're a financial firm, so it should happen, and I'm amazed because we have many employees who work for other firms, but we're handling their financial area, which is kind of interesting to me. They've just never asked or never approached it or never offered it. One thing that we've always said is when we deal with family, that means there are no minimums if they're family. If they're family, I don't care if they're 5 years old and their grandfather gave them a 50-cent piece and they want to invest it or something. You know what I mean? Not quite that, but we're going to do that because they're part of you. They're part of the family, and we want to educate them. But if you were, one of the things you can do, like one of the things we do, we want to teach our staff. We share what we do, who we do it for, how we do it, in sense of if we're helping someone with retirement community and what does that planning entail, or a parent has Alzheimer's, or healthcare decisions, things like that. And we are a resource for, hey, my grandkids are coming in this weekend. What can I do for them in the community? Can I take them somewhere? I heard that, you can go watch the owls nesting, or, the eggs hatching or whatever. How do I do that? So we'll bring in people who it may be a fun day. It may be a learning day, right? And they will select what they might need. And we provide that kind of as a part of the resource of just caring about our team. So in Roberts of Philadelphia, you could determine, because usually they're just talking to each other on financial decisions. But you could provide something that would allow them to get an education of some sort. Oh my goodness, sorry.
These are not good for us Italians because we use our hands.
No, it's terrible because we both talk with our hands, and I'm trying to okay, maybe I should have more coffee here and not talk with my hands. Terrible. I've broken a lot of pieces on desk. I'll tell you, just because I get excited.
Never still, I know.
But I don't know. I think it's, for example, you have a 401k, you said, that you offer. So, traditional 401k education is somebody comes in and teaches you why you should sign up, and maybe once a year, maybe they might meet with you. When we have done 401ks for our clients, we will go in and we offer complimentary time for them to talk through their personal financial issues, not just the 401k.
Right,
And I can't tell you how many young people I find from all different businesses that offer the 401k, but they're still sitting in cash. They made the commitment to have the money taken out, but they never invested it. Never put it to work.
Right.
I'm like, oh my goodness. That's, one of the principles. You have to own something. You have to be a shareholder. You need to put it to work. Now, if interest rates are 18, 20% or even 8%, maybe you don't need to be in the market. Maybe that's okay as long as you're earning interest. But they generally know very little about it, but yet it is their greatest opportunity to build some future security. You know, and unfortunately, the common sense knowledge of the types of decisions that you have to make as you're developing, whether in a career or family or whatever transition, those practical kind of decisions aren't well made by many people. And it's not because they don't have the best of intention. It's just because they have the wrong input. What a neighbor does may not work for you. So,
Yeah.
what do I need to know? We always felt that we're kind of the CEO and the person, we're the resource and we'll execute, but you have to make that decision. But you've got
Yeah.
to make sure you got the right information in front of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard because how do you pass that along to young people?
Right.
But Rob, I'm seeing in this generation, they are inquisitive. They are interested.
Yeah.
They do want to learn because they're tired of being on their phone and all this,
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah.
online
Yeah. I
information. But
agree.
what does
Yeah.
it mean to them?
Right.
They
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe there's a way to inculcate that
Yeah.
into an offering somehow.
Yeah. I could see, just as you say that the participation rate is high, but then what are they doing with it in there? And I don't know that
What
they
do they
know.
do? And they're probably not getting much advice on it at all.
At all. No,
Yeah,
there's
not
none.
at all.
There's none. There's a link every now and then. The thing will send them which I know they don't look at anyway,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And that's still not somebody communicating with them to find out
Exactly.
what they want in their
Yeah.
life.
And obviously our staff learns a lot because we're very transparent in what we're doing for the families we're serving.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of learn through osmosis kind of on that.
Yeah.
But the fact that they will reach out is very impressive because many years ago, our generation of workers generally wouldn't do that. Now, when I initially started, it was different. Everybody that worked for me was over the age of like 45 or 55. They were all older,
Yeah.
retired or semi-retired type folks that I would bring in that would come from other states, leave their career and just want to do something, part-time when we first started. Actually, they ran me. I didn't run them.
Yeah, yeah.
Kim, you can't do that. You
Yeah.
can't write that letter to the editor about the garbage on the side of the road every season. I said, why not? Those are your clients. Do not write that letter. I said, okay, I'll be quiet. But yeah, you got to find how it interests them and what they can gain from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that's a piece that, surviving the last couple of crises has gone by the wayside. The hurricanes that we've had recently and the pandemic, and those are things that we hadn't dealt with in this area for a long time. Many years.
And how do you survive that in a service type business? I mean, for us, we're still doing our job. In fact, we're having to do it at multi times because people are losing their homes. We've got to make arrangements.
Yeah.
We got to figure that out financially.
Yeah.
How do we do this? So, we're all working remote except for maybe 5 of our staff, like during COVID, that said, I can't be productive at home. Can I please be at the office?
Yeah.
So, we set them up. We've got 7,500 square feet, so we could set them up to only a few people being in there. But you think, wow, how do you do things? But we get on a Zoom call. We get to the people we need to get to. It's not the same as one-on-one.
Yeah.
But how do you handle a business like yours or a restaurant business or something where
Yeah,
you have to have the client walk in the door right now today
Yeah. That was
in
another
order to
world.
sustain
Wow.
your business?
Yeah, there's nothing
That's
coming in. We were selling
tough.
at the time for the 56 days that we were closed by. Well, I'll never forget when.
You remember it exactly.
I remember,
56
I
days,
remember
2
when
minutes,
DeSantis
33
on a
seconds.
Friday. It was May 8th. It was my wife's birthday. DeSantis came out
Wow.
and said salons can open on Monday, and
Oh,
it was
wasn't
like the
that
greatest.
great?
It was phenomenal. I was so
Yeah.
grateful for him.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And because people, regardless, they wanted to feel good. They wanted to get
I
their
was
hair
going
done.
to say, they
that.
wanted to be in here.
They
Yeah,
did.
imagine
They
all
were-
the women that had the gray coming out to here. or
Yeah, they
whatever.
weren't too
they
excited
need
about getting
you.
on a Zoom call at that point. They knew
Yeah.
they had Zoom, but they didn't want to look like with those roots. So
Exactly. Put a
during
hat
that,
on.
during that time period, we were doing whatever we could to fill time and space, and we ended up creating online system where people could have their color brought to their house. We couldn't apply it, but we were just
wow.
delivering pre-mixed color ready to go. So we set up
Really?
a delivery route, there was some program at the time that allowed us to map out all the addresses we had to go to, like a pizza delivery almost. It would tell
Oh
them
my
it's your
gosh.
color showing up at this hour. Get ready to
That's
do the
amazing,
application.
Rob. Now, see, that is exciting. That's really having, a creative head and vision to say, okay, this is how we could do this.
Okay, so
I have
something.
not heard that.
They wanted to
Maybe
be
I
able to
wouldn't
do
have
it.
gone gray if I had known that, or white, whatever this
Embrace
is.
the beauty. Yeah. A lot of
That's-
people. It was something for us to do. Number one, it
Right.
it occupied time, but it also gave people a little bit of something during that time period because
Yeah,
we were
sure.
doing nothing in the service business. I feel
Yeah.
bad. We just got back from California, and I feel bad for the people there and the stylists there that were forced to. They were closed so much longer than we were.
Yeah, it changed their lives up, I'm
Forever.
sure, financially.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it changed the world in so many different ways. But to survive, to go through the things, and and you've been here a long time. Nothing. There was nothing like Irma, and then nothing
Oh
like
gosh,
Ian.
exactly.
The
Oh my
two of them were
gosh.
the worst we've ever had. We
Yes.
get nipped by
Rough.
Charlie and Wilma, and but
Yeah,
they were
I'm
all
sure.
nothing to the degree that those two
Not
were.
at all.
So riding the cycle of business, whatever.
Yeah,
it
I
is,
mean,
but
I
it was-
remember being out of power for a few days and
Yeah.
41 flooding
Yeah.
and things like that. But it's just something that had to take your attention and you had to get up and running again. But
Yeah.
we didn't have the disasters here.
No.
That, and to have all of this happen from a financial and mental wellness standpoint
thing,
and
yeah.
physical
Yeah.
is, you're talking about hurricanes sandwiched in between having COVID. Look at what people in this area have been through over a period of less than a decade of
Yes.
time,
Yes.
right? That's a lot to go through and a lot of changes, especially for people who lost homes or businesses, or look at how many
Yeah.
businesses
Oh my
had to
gosh.
close.
Yeah.
Jan and I used to every summer say, okay, let's get the list out. What are
Yep.
the new restaurants? And
Yep.
let's go try them all.
Yes,
And let's,
yes.
and now forget it. We can't even come near to it. And there's so many changes too. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a lot to go through. And physically, when you think of during that time, people on their health, and I'm not even talking, other scenarios, but that like during COVID, they obviously weren't going in and attending to things. They just waited until it became urgent
Right.
to attend to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, we had a lot more unfortunate deaths and issues with folks that shouldn't really been. And I said one thing to my staff when we prepared them, and I'll tell you, I had great folks. We have, just great leaders in both offices and overall in our operations area and compliance. And they were just so super about getting to the staff and getting the right things done and, making sure what was going on. But I said to the group, we're either going to have a lot of divorces or a lot of babies.
Yeah,
one or the
Right.
other is going to happen during this time. And, you had 80 and 85-year-old people and older divorcing, recognizing, and younger, recognizing that they didn't have the kind of marriage that they wanted, or the opposite happened. They finally learned to enjoy each other's company better
Yeah.
because maybe
Yeah.
they were too busy to go into all these things.
So true. Yeah.
And they learned to really kind of relearn about each other.
Yeah. It's
It was
what it forces you
interesting,
to do.
but because that impacts, again, everything you do is impacted by the financial staying power you have. So we were incredibly busy then. We're always busy and, for that kind of thing because it has to do with so much
Yeah.
of what's going on.
Yeah.
But,
And just disrupted life in ways that we weren't.
but that's a
prepared
very
for.
creative solution. It's interesting doing that.
Yeah, whatever we could do at the time, we were, and I'll just talk about Ron DeSantis and his decision to open up that. I remember
Everybody
hearing
was
that news 'cause-
excited. I didn't realize that was May 8th. Interesting.
Yeah, it was my wife's. We were gonna. I apologized to her for not celebrating her birthday the way we had planned, but we had to get. She understood.
Oh
that we had
gosh,
to,
yeah. Go
we have
get
to-
open.
yeah.
Get people back in
Yeah, I had to
again.
put tape down to where people stood and the whole.
Oh, did you do that and all
Yeah.
the what do they
We didn't
call
do
it, the
the
loose site or
plexiglass
something?
stuff.
You didn't do
No,
that.
no,
Okay,
we just did
kept
what we did,
people
but you
apart.
didn't know because you didn't know.
Yes.
You just had to, and there was no guidance on what to do because that's what scared me the most. Is like, all right, are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? What is
Yeah.
the right way to do it? Because it was changing
Right.
every day.
And you had to think about your liability.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
we were
I
getting
mean,
bashed on
ugh.
Facebook and social media for opening. Number one, we're
I'm
killing
sure.
people is what people were saying. You're
Oh,
you're a
gosh.
murderer.
Oh,
You're
no.
killing people. Just
Yeah.
because we were open and some people chose to work and some didn't, and that was okay.
Yeah,
Whoever
you
chose
gave
to be here,
absolutely. We did the
you
same.
want to do it, great. If not, it's okay too. It's fine. You just do what's in your heart, the right thing for you.
Right.
And same with guests or customers, the same way. It's just like if you want to come, we're here for you.
Right.
And,
but if you don't, we understand.
Yeah.
When
but-
things get better, we'll bring you back in.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you learn to go with whatever life throws at you in this.
Go with the flow, but make sure it makes some kind of sense. And again, you got to have the staying power to be able to do something like that.
Yeah,
We don't
well-
know what that next crisis is. And, our big thing has always been planning in advance of need. I mean, that's been one of the biggest drivers because you don't want to be making decisions in the middle of the crisis. You don't want to determine then whether you can handle something or not. So
Yeah.
we've always been very big about that kind of reserves in a sense, whether you're a business or an individual family or whatever. There are so many unknown things that can happen to change your circumstances. A
Yeah.
child becomes ill and your insurance company doesn't cover it. So now you could drain hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, do you want to have that capability to do that? Of course, who
Yeah.
doesn't want? It looks very different if you don't have that staying power. So.
Is there a formula or a recommendation for somebody in terms of how much they should have in the bank for or emergency fund? Somebody who's 21 and maybe not thinking about that, but to educate people. On
I
what is
remember
that.
being interviewed for a TV show and the person interviewing me was really young, and he said, how much should I have or whatever? And I said, well, let's talk about just one budget item. Let's talk about healthcare, because he didn't believe the numbers I was throwing at him as what he needs to do. Now, if you talk to Jan, he'll tell you should save 50% of every dollar you make. Should go in the bank. He's very regimented about this. I said there comes a time when you should spend a little too and give a little too, But there's no magic formula. What you really have to know is what kind of life do you want to lead? And what kind of choices do you want to be able to make? And what are your circumstances? So, some people are perfectly fine living on a lower income level, and some they need 7 figures to make it work for what they do every year. And others, it's interesting, this is getting off topic a little bit, but teachers versus other very skilled, experienced workers, let's say, or folks that have built their own businesses, but teachers, the ratio of their income to their savings is the largest percentage over, for example, physicians who might earn a whole lot more. But it's all about what you need. It's what you're spending. It's what your cash flow is and your cash flow needs and how do you accommodate it. It's very hard for someone today to understand a lump sum of money and what that really should, in a prudent way, produce as far as cash flow. I got to stop using my hands. Cash flow.
Don't stop.
So anyways, if you had $1 million and, traditional statistically, sorry, I didn't eat this morning. 3% will continue to grow those assets. 4% will preserve. 5% over time may start deteriorating those assets. Well, that's
what is
hard.
that number? What is the percentage?
3, 4, and 5% is generally statistically what we've worked for over many years. Meaning 3%. If you had $1 million, I'm just taking $1 million, doesn't matter. Add whatever zeros or take away whatever zeros you want.
Okay.
If you take 3% of that, you will continue to grow a legacy. You'll continue to grow assets and compound money.
Okay.
If you take 4%, you should be able to preserve those assets and continue to have them provide a set amount of cash flow. And then if you take 5%, over time, you'll begin to start terminating those assets, unless, of course, you're in a climate where you have 8% CDs and you're all invested in CDs. One of the things we talk about is our 12 principles of financial independence, believe it or not, and what makes the difference. And again, people not having pensions, having a lump sum out of a 401k is not the same as having a guaranteed monthly check coming in every year in and year out until you pass away.
Yeah.
So most people see a large sum of money and they think, well, that can accommodate X amount of expenditure, so I'm ready to retire. But in essence, it may only accommodate 1/5 of what they need in cash flow. So, I was going to talk a little bit about the most important lessons. I'd say, number one, own. If you constantly save money in like a 401k and you're sitting in cash or some other equivalent fixed income instrument, you will not grow a legacy in most cases because you won't keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
Even inflation
it's
at
like
2%.
Losing money, right? Yeah.
I mean, so exactly. That's exactly what happens. So you want to own, you want to participate, be an owner in something, having patience and keeping an open mind, having the ability to not try to follow the crowds or want instantaneous, which again goes back to some of these young multimillionaires, but generally they're pretty smart, intuitive people, and they know to get the right people on their team to help them through that. That I have noticed, But making yourself valuable, I tell people, if you have a passion, that's one thing, but you need to know how to execute on the passion and make yourself valuable. Because if you make yourself valuable in something that you do, you will not only earn a living, you can thrive from it. And there is also a big difference between earned income and unearned income. So we say, know and understand the tax system. If I'm earning a wage, I'm going to pay a whole lot out for taxes and insurance and all of those things I need to participate, my mortgage, et cetera, but it's going to be taxed at a different rate than if I build assets and I have the assets earned for me. So the goal is build the assets, use the rule of 72. Have you heard of that, Rob?
I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, we found that's great with young people. If I have,
I don't remember how it.
well,
because it calculates,
basically,
but I
let's
remember
say I
hearing it
have
all the time.
10,000 today, and let's say I'm going to get a 10% return. I'll just say as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Then you divide that into 72. So it's going to take me 7.2 years to double that.
Okay.
And that 7.2 year period of time. So if I start with 10,000, it's going to take me 7.2 years to get to 20,000, just letting that sit, not adding.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I go to the next 7.2 years, same time period, I'm going to go 20 to 40,000. I earned 20 grand in that second 7-year period, and I only earned 10 grand in the first. That's what I mean by compound money. We start out, clients of ours, if they have a grandchild or a child or whatever, first thing we do is send a piggy bank. Teach your child to save. Then you'll teach them to invest. Then they'll continue to go from there. But also, big thing is most people don't know what they spend. I mean, today there are easy ways to have a program that will give you those numbers, information.
Yeah.
If you have information, you can build knowledge. If you can build knowledge, you can make good, intelligent decisions. I don't need to be your decision maker. I need to help you develop knowledge and education for you, not for your next door neighbor, not for your brother, but for you. And if you understand like impact, well, what does the price of oil have to do with me? Well, we know what's going on in the world today, and we also know what it's costing to go to the grocery store or maybe have your hair done or go to, a restaurant for dinner. So learning about that, learning about currency, learning about economics, interest rates, how it impacts you, important. And probably one of the biggest drivers of, when you say, how much do I need to retire or what's the number? There is no magic number, but don't become emotionally tied to money like you get tied to your passion in life. Whatever your career is, you have to treat your money decisions differently. That's almost like splitting the business decision from the family working together decision, right?
Yeah.
It has to be, analytical, and you always have to have staying power. If you have staying power, it's only a matter of time, as long as you're an investor and have something, you own something. It's generally a matter of time before things recover. Obviously the past is no guarantee of the future and all that. But if you don't have cash in the bank or reserves to get you through that COVID period of 56 days of closure or whatever, then you have no choice. You have no decisions to make. You have to close. You're done, right? But if you can build that staying power, and let's see, what are some of the others that we talk about? Well, invest. And I guess really the biggest piece is understanding what you are earning, what you really are spending, and what it's going to cost you to replace your income or whatever you have coming in today.
Yeah.
When that flow stops, and that's tough for most people because they don't really know what it means when I stop earning that wage or earning that income from my business, and now I'm going to turn it off. And now I have a lump sum of money. What's my drawdown? What can I create? What can I live on? Most people, I'd say probably closer to the high 90%, 99, whatever, don't really know what it costs them to live. They don't know what their expenses are. They don't know if they can afford one house over another. And they're intelligent, bright people. They may have built incredible businesses or have incredible jobs and got a great college education. But we just don't teach the basic fundamentals of money and how to make good financial decisions. Everybody can kind of do their investment thing. There's all kinds of investment programs. Investments are almost a commodity if you're educated in how to handle it. People should be able to make reasonably good decisions there.
Yeah.
But it's the financial decision making that they get caught up on. Like I can afford that $1.5 million house at the current mortgage rates that are here. But really, they can't. Really, their affordability is about a $750,000 house. Well, how do they know that? The banks are telling them, hey, you can qualify for up to here. Well, that's great if you want 50% of your earnings to go to support the house. If you don't want to take your children on vacation, if you don't want to go skiing in the winter here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and that's where people can't relate the numbers.
Yeah. No, that's not a part of everyday thinking, to think through, well, what can
it's the decision making. That's where your dad, my dad, that's where our parents had to really think through it. And most of it, they started out not having anything, right? So they really had to think through the decisions they make as they went along. They didn't have money to invest. It wasn't the markets that was driving their
No,
savings or their
not at
potential
all.
retirement
No.
one day, right?
Hmm.
A totally
Yeah.
different world.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even in his thought process. Yeah, just, yeah. What's this entity here that's going to pay the bills? What can I
Yeah,
pour
right.
back
What can
into
I
it to
do?
make it to,
And most people don't know what they spend because they kind of spend all over the place. I mean, they might use Venmo or whatever, Zelle or whatever,
very true.
or then
Yeah.
some on this
Spend all
credit
over the
card.
place. Yeah.
They've got 5 other credit cards.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's cash in the pocket.
Yeah.
They're spending to buy lunch every day. They
Yeah, or
really
spending
don't
some in
put
the
it
business.
together.
You're spending it through the business
Yeah.
and it doesn't count, or you think it doesn't count, but it's part of it. Like,
Yeah.
there-
Yeah,
there's a-
right. Like if you're paying for certain things that are bona fide and correct if you're running a business,
Yeah.
it's coming through the business income. But, you sell the business or you close the business.
That's not going to be there. Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
going to be there,
Yeah.
but you still need to drive the car.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
still
yeah.
want to do some things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So 3% is a number of drawdown of
If you
some
want to
of your-
continue to build assets. Now, I say that is we have had people who have drawn down much more than that over many decades. But it just depends on how they plan for it in the market. Because do you produce more? Yes, you should produce. There should be if you're buying equities, you should have some reasonable return over a period of time. The reason why most folks don't achieve the returns of, let's say, and I have to be compliance oriented here, but
Yeah.
let's say overall there used to be this statistic, and I'm sure it's still out there. I haven't paid much attention to it lately, but people would invest in a mutual fund. The mutual fund would almost always do better overall, if you look at the numbers, on performance than what you as an investor in that fund may do. And the reason being is people jump. They want to time the market. Oh my gosh, things are getting terrible. We're at war. We're this, we're that, sell. Oh, things are nicer. If it's appreciated 15%, I should buy back in. Totally wrong thinking. That's getting emotionally involved in something. But if you want to continue to build assets, and if you could take a 3% drawdown, you can get that you could construct a portfolio on dividend or interest rates today that'll get you that and continue the possibility of growing your assets. But they say statistically 5%, the market never grows every year consistently. It's this. It's a lot of this. In fact,
Yeah.
if people valued their homes every day like we value the stock market, they'd probably be selling and buying all over multiple times, right?
Right.
It's an unknown factor until
Yeah.
you go to sell your home or buy a home,
Right. Right.
But the market is priced every single day, and people are looking at this every single day, and they get nervous in the wrong things. The right things to get nervous about is understanding where your paycheck is coming from. So, for example, when we hit COVID, right as that started out, we were actually in Baja then and trying to get back, obviously. And so the first thing we did was look at every client that was earning a living, meaning they weren't living off their assets and retired, earning a living that was dependent on something public, something, access. For example, we had some clients that, were involved in the healthcare industry with hospitals where they would go in and bring equipment and then train the surgeons in the operating room, that kind of thing. And they were paid a very base salary level, but earned a big bonus because of how many hospitals they got into, et cetera. Well, the first thing we did was call those clients and say, stop investing. Stop your 401k at the moment. Stop the extra money we've got going into these couple of portfolios, et cetera. And they said, wait a minute, Kim, you've never told us to stop investing. You tell us to keep investing, maybe lower the amounts. And I said, no, I want you to stop investing. I want you to raise cash because we feel that there may be a jeopardy here with your income. We don't know how long this is going to last, and you've got to build staying power. And they're like, no, we're still getting paid. I expect to get, I got a lot of things lined up, et cetera. Well, what happened? The doors were shut on all of that. It shut down. They weren't allowing them in the hospitals or in the medical facilities. So the bonuses went away for like a year. So, they didn't have the same income level, but they had learned to spend at that income level. So that's why I said stop investing. And that spending wasn't really true spending. Some of it was spending, some of it was investing. We said, stop the investing. Not that we don't want you to invest and not that there aren't opportunities at lower rates in the market, but you got to have cash on hand. You got to feed your family. You have to think about making your mortgage payment, not losing your home. Let's just temporarily do this. So that's what I mean by making good financial decisions that are different from how you invest your portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's kind of counterintuitive, sort of, from
Yeah.
your
Oh,
perspective?
exactly. You say, well, let me keep going. Well, I remember a gentleman coming to see me. We have had a lot of very high-end executives come in and say, I'm stuck on the cash flow piece. That's where they usually get stuck because their lives get so involved and they have gifting plans and they're shifting assets and they're retired and they're paying for this, or they have a mom they're supporting or a mother-in-law, and they can't really get a grasp because they're living off assets that are invested, not necessarily pensions or a monthly check coming in.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to figure it all out. But this one gentleman came in, he said, after we had met and there, it was too late to do anything. I mean, there was one thing that we did. We did sell the very large home they were in and had to downsize them dramatically. But he said, you know what? I didn't keep my eye on the right ball. He said, my wife kept asking me about it. He was in the real estate business and he was a builder and he just kept investing in real estate. But there's something called PCF, positive cash flow. Well, when we hit the bad markets back in 08, 09, 10, 11, as we were digging out of it, he lost practically everything. And because he could not support the cash flow needs of all the properties that he owned. And he certainly couldn't sell them because they were underwater under the mortgage amounts at that point.
Right. Yeah.
So, those kind of things, yes, he was growing his net worth, a number on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
but that's not cash in hand. That's different, and he realized that he should have been tracking his expenses and the income and making sure that he was still had the assets or the liquidity to either put to reserves or to be in a more liquid position. And that's the same thing with family businesses. How many of them are in illiquid positions? Your family business is generally your profit, the asset you've built, right?
Yeah.
With few exceptions, but usually that's the asset.
So what makes, I hear in so many ways how you're different. How would you summarize how you and your family of people are different separate from other firms?
Because we feel that the investing part of it, when people talk about wealth or their services or their greatest gift to God on earth or whatever, they're usually talking about the investments. Oh, we were up X percent, and
right.
everybody else
So
or
here.
the S&P was only up this.
Yes.
I don't care how much you're up because you could be up tremendously. We could do an incredible job at the portfolio. But if you're not making the right financial decisions and what you're spending and how you're managing cash flows and taxes and all those other things, you're never going to be able to keep up with it. So that's why, because of the way our parents taught us, is how we believe in looking at a client situation. So when we begin, before we even, obviously we have to do the investing so that it's good investing or our clients wouldn't stay with us, right?
Right.
But we're always going to start with, what are you all about? Tell us about you. Yes, we'll look at all the numbers, but we're going to look at all those other things that you probably haven't even paid attention to. And yes, we can make sure that we dot the I's, we cross the T's, and we get a good financial picture. And then it's going to take us a couple of years to really get to know you. Because again, somebody can live well off of, $100,000 a year income, and others, they got to have 7 figures to live well. So it's all in proportion.
Yeah.
And so if we have the picture and we know what you're all about and we know what's important to you and we figure out what revenue or expenses are going to come up in your future because of however you're set up today. Maybe your wife has a pension down the line, right? But you don't, or whatever. Or maybe you have an upcoming expense. There's someone in the family that you're going to have to financially care for. What does that mean to you? Or there's a health issue. What does that mean? Or maybe you've, worked for different companies and you still have 401ks all over.
Yeah.
And I've never done, I can't, and, there are many people who got into like investments of I won't mention particulars, but investments where they didn't recognize that when they cashed out, they actually lost a benefit. Like, maybe they could have approached the company and said, I want to stop paying, like premiums on an insurance plan or a long-term care. Well, they might be able to stop paying, but still have a benefit resting there because they've paid in over the years. But they just cash it out because they say, I can't afford to keep paying it. So they just cash it out and they don't realize they took that loss, So there's but we try to understand the person's picture in every aspect. Even healthcare is a big decision. Whether, I'm working with folks that, maybe they decided to move mom in the house, but now it's not working because now the daughter's having cognitive issues. And now the husband is there trying to take care of two people with cognitive issues. And it becomes difficult. You either have to have full-time care or maybe there's an option and you have to look at a retirement community or something to help. But, a lot of scenarios like that where a spouse will try to take care of another spouse and it'll be very draining. And the last thing they're looking at is the financial side of it, and yet the financial side is going to drive the ultimate crisis decision you're going to have to make if you don't plan for it.
Yeah.
So we kind of look at everything, and the best thing that we can bring to the table is really the experience we've had from all our clients. We can pass that experience on to other clients in an obvious confidential way, but to be able to work with some of the folks we worked with early on and to learn from what they did wrong and what they did right, that was the largest value above any other learning experience other than practical with my dad over the years when we grew up.
Yeah. Well, that's so much more than just where to put the money.
Yeah, that's the easy part of designing your plan, believe it or not. Well, because that's what we do. We know that area.
Yeah.
That's the easiest part. The tougher part is really getting what you're all about first on the financial picture and then learning the personal side so that we can serve you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my older clients, especially the gentlemen, say, okay, so this is like a marriage. I said, yep, I'm not competing with your wife for her side of what she puts together. But I said, this is like a marriage, and that's how close it has to be. And I'm not, we never wanted to charge an hourly fee because I would rather a client pick up the phone and call us and say, I'm having this issue. I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And since we know their entire financial picture and tax picture and all that, we can easily give some input to that. And say, well, if you do this, this is going to affect this. So maybe choice 2 that we're talking about is a better way for you to go, and here's why. And we can help that decision versus they make the decision, then they come in 3 months later and say, oh, gosh, look what I've done. And we're like, oh, you could have done it different,
Yeah.
So we always wanted people to pick up the phone. And if they have new information or something, maybe they have an inheritance coming from an uncle or whatever. Okay, we'll provide the information if you have it. We're going to put a note on it. Not that we're going to count it towards your future in a sense, because how do we know he won't need to spend it down before it actually gets to you?
Yeah.
So, but we're going to know it exists, and then we're going to maybe help that uncle plan for how he wants to distribute that to you when the time comes. It just makes it easier.
Such a paradigm shift for me just hearing it that way, because I never realized that there was that it's the whole picture you're looking at. I literally only thought it was just what am I doing with the money? Where's it going?
How can you invest for somebody in a vacuum? I remember the first big check, that came, what I decided was big check back then, came in the door. Client person, the new introduction to us, wanted to invest about $500,000 at the time. And so I said, okay, here's how we work. Here's what I'll need to take a look at. I'd love the privilege of working with you. He did not want to disclose anything else, and I understand that at the time. And I said, I'm sorry, then we're not the firm for you, because I cannot invest your money or give you advice if I don't know how else, I don't know if I have to do it on a tax-free basis or taxable. I don't know if you have some other, credit. I mean, pay off debt first. If you're paying today, unfortunately, debt is being built back up.
Yeah.
And there's foreclosures have increased. A lot of things are happening. That's how it's affecting individuals. But if you're sitting there on credit card debt that you've been running because you put your kid through college and it's at 30% now rate, and you want to invest with me, first thing we're going to do is invest back and get rid of this 30% debt. We're going to get that off the table,
Yeah.
or we're going to, visit with the credit card companies, let's say, and somehow figure out what to do with it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's awesome. Cause I just this like popcorn moment.
well, like I
You know,
say again, it's how we started because, basically when you got in this business, you either got in as a trader or broker,
yeah.
or you got in as an investment firm where basically you were investing portfolios, which could be for clients that came direct or through other advisors, or you could deal with the personal client first and build from there. We just chose the third, only because that's how we were taught.
Yeah.
And when I say that I was working in my dad's office at 11 years of age, and so were other family members and different times. But Ray and I were the ones that originally took to it. And then other brother and sister came into the picture later on because they were younger at the time,
Yeah.
But being exposed to that showed me so much. It just taught us a lot.
Yeah. Well, who was instrumental? Is there somebody who had a huge impact on you in your life that changed the trajectory of your life?
Besides my parents.
Could be
Or
anyone,
family.
whoever it is for
I mean,
you.
obviously, my parents incredible because
Yeah.
if they saw an initiative on my part, they encouraged it. When I loved poetry, my dad had someone he worked with on the business side whose mom was a well-known poet. He arranged for me to go spend 3 hours on a Saturday with her, like several times. I think I did it like 6 weeks in a row, where she could critique my poetry and all that. I'm lousy at English, by the way. So, and I'm also not so good at numbers. I shouldn't say that. My brothers are super intellectual on that side. They can do a quick calculation like this because my dad taught them all the shortcuts. But anyways, I would say that the people who I looked at, unfortunately, I didn't grow up being able to shadow anybody in the business other than when I was really young because Ray and I started it and we kind of had to do our thing and learn as you go.
Yeah.
But those people that probably had the best influence on me as to what kind of philosophy and values would be Uncle Norman, who was an old Jewish guy in Buffalo. He was not an uncle. He was someone my dad met and fell in love with, and I
Yeah.
used to spend time with him too. Again, my father would expose us to people who could help us, and he had all kinds of businesses. And, he would talk about, what kind of screws you should carry in a hardware store versus this and where your profit margins were and all that. There was another gentleman, Dr. Christopher Haggerty. Chris was a kind of a Fortune 500 speaker and dealt with executive level companies all over the world. And when he would come into town, him and my dad became very close friends. Again, all older folks. I was very young. And Chris would call up my father and he'd say, Frank, I'm in town. I'm going to come in town. He says, I got to go to, wherever I got to go to New York. I'm in California, but I figure Buffalo's on the way. So I'm going to arrive at 11 o'clock at night. Do you think Joni will let me spend the night? And so my dad would say, oh, come on over, Chris. I'll pick you up at the airport when you're getting in. He would pick him up at the airport. On his way home, my mom would be waking every one of us kids up. And we would go down to that family room and we would all sit there. Chris would arrive and he would spend an hour or 2 hours talking to us at 11 o'clock at night about what's going on in the world, right? And then we'd go to bed and my dad and him would stay up all night and then he'd fly out the next morning. But things like that. So I would say then there was another person who was very instrumental. Joe Diadamo was just a favorite of mine. These were executives that just were so intuitive and human, and you could relate to, and they loved sitting with younger people, and talking through everything. They didn't leave anything out, And Joe had retired down here, but he ran and he was president of an insurance company up in Jericho, Long Island, which was part of a larger company, Northwest National. And I learned so much from him. I learned how the real world worked. In a sense, I remember we were helping design some first product, which was a life insurance product based on survivorship. And the reason for that was it made more sense to insure the woman than the man, because usually women had longer life expectancies and your estate taxes were due when the second of you passed. That's how it worked. You could pass between spouses, but when it went to your kids, chop, and we were in the 300,000 range was all you could pass when I initially got in the business.
Wow.
It grew to 625,000. Now it's in, multi-millions, 15 million each, whatever. But back then, it could be the value of somebody's house, and everything else you left, an IRA or whatever, would be subject to taxes. So I used to have to argue with the underwriters about why the woman should be insured because she wasn't working. Only the man was working. So then we said, well, what about a survivorship life policy? And, so he would expose me. He would take me into meetings with the actuaries and the heads of these companies, and we'd talk about the product that we'd want design and the business we were doing. We got to a point where we were doing so much business. That was like the wholesale side of our business for other advisors that were doing a lot of estate planning. And that they would develop product for us. And then if we did so much of the business, he'd say, it's time to take the chassis to another company. We got to spread the risk. And but I remember sitting there with an actuary and him looking at me and saying, there's a problem with your business. I thought, I'm young. What do I know? What do you mean there's a problem with our business? He says, it's too persistent. I said, excuse me? He says, it's too persistent. It stays on the books. And I said, why is that a problem? And he says, well, the products are designed to be lapse supported. I said, huh? What? Excuse me? So I never knew that insurance was created and it was developed, not all insurance, but most insurance was developed with the idea that the policy would lapse well before they had to pay out. So they based their charges, their premiums, all of that based on how many years that policy would stay on the books. They wanted it to get replaced. We didn't we started with a great product. And if that product worked, and it was to this day the very best, Reagan changed the rules and minimized what you could pay in up front in the first 5 years. But basically, I was told that it was much harder to, gain a new client, someone to do business with, than it was to just retain a client. That was more important, keeping a relationship and taking care of clients. So we never did free dinner seminars or all those things that our industry did because we felt who we needed to take care of was our client. So when they told me the business was too persistent and too loyal and that it was lapse supportive, I was... So those are the things I would learn from Joe. I learned how business really worked because I never grew up in corporate America. I grew up as my own, we had to create a business, and I wouldn't have created it if I could have gone to some company and taken care of a client relationship the way we felt it should have been taken care of.
Yeah. Wow.
So
the Joan, your mother's name, Joan?
Joan? Yeah. Thank you.
I always ask this question. How would she have described you?
Oh, my mom and I didn't get along very well when I shouldn't say that. I always felt she didn't understand me, which I didn't understand me either. How would she describe me? I have a lot of her characteristics, which I thank God every day for. Very much gratitude. She was a fabulous lady to do what she did with my father and raise all of us children and work. She worked in the military and, traveled around with him in a trailer and all that. But she would probably describe me as stubborn, definitely stubborn. If I get something in my mind, I'm going to hold tight to that, whatever. Visionary, probably. Enthusiastic, always positive. A lot of energy. My energy I get from my dad. When I'm sick, I probably have the same energy level that most people have.
Yeah.
So when I'm well, I'm way over the top. So I get that, especially the hand thing. I don't know. That's an interesting conversation. That's a, interesting thought. How would she describe me? Probably too intelligent for my britches, I think, because I always was asking why. Anytime somebody said to me, I'd say, why, or how does it work, or can I see? I still drive Jan crazy. We go over to Europe and, do you want to see the sites? No, I want to see that manufacturing plant over there. I want to know what they do. I want to get inside of that plant. I still want to go underground in New York City. There's just certain things that fascinate me. And I really think that my earlier engagements with Uncle Norman and Chris Haggerty and Joe Diadamo and just created that curiosity.
Yeah.
Because you can learn so much from that. I know you can learn a lot from reading too, but I'm a visionary. She would describe me, not visionary, but I'm a vision person. If I see it, I can learn it. If I read it, Yes, I'll pick up something, but it won't really get embedded in me. You know, I can pick up things very easily. I used to love to go into businesses, and I would do this all the time. Like if I went to the city, see a Broadway show or something, I'd think of businesses that I could get into or people I could connect with just to see how it ran. I used to love to walk the floor, see what it was all about. You learn so much that way.
Yeah.
You know?
But your mind never stops that. It's always going. It's
Oh,
always
I know.
right?
That's the problem. Yeah, I don't sleep too much. How about you, Rob?
No, I'm very
Yeah.
inquisitive like this. That's why I love AI, because sometimes we were in California and I see Northrop Grumman, which is one of their manufacturing plants. And it's like, what do they make there? Well, I got to know
Yes,
what they make
right.
there. What is
Yeah,
that?
see,
What do they
same
do
thing.
right there?
Yes,
Gotta look it
yes.
up. She's like, do you have to do that about everything I do? I'm obsessed with, I don't know why. My mind needs to understand. There's this big power plant in Huntington Beach that's almost on the beach, but it's shut down. They don't use it anymore. It's just these big smokestacks.
And don't you wonder
is that
why?
thing?
What is it?
What is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
what
have to
could you
look it up
turn
all
it
the
into?
time. Right.
Yeah, no,
That's
I'm
big
exactly the same. That's the one thing I love about the telephone and Google, I got to say, because if I don't know something or I hear something, you can look into it
Yeah.
and find out stuff in an instant
Yeah.
that would have taken us forever to research in a
Yeah.
library, right?
Yeah, and if you did, you looked at the encyclopedia, which was written 15 years before you were reading it.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
didn't have the
Exactly.
updated information anyway.
Yes,
You
right.
had to.
Right.
Is there
What a
a
world.
movie? So if your life were a movie,
Mm-hmm.
what would the opening soundtrack be?
On my life?
Yeah.
The opening soundtrack, so that's music? Oh, I'm bad on that. I know what I love, but do I know the name of it? Oh, boy. What would it be? Oh, wow. Well, I mean, the music I would love, I don't know how it would relate to my life, so I'd really have to think about that. Opening soundtrack. To Dream the Impossible Dream, maybe? Or When You Walk Through a Rainbow, all that.
Yeah.
I love Andrea Bocelli's music. That stimulates me. I probably shouldn't tell him this, but I like listening to his music to clean the house. But, it's just so invigorating.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know because, why I say I don't know, Rob, is because I've had so many different stages of life at such a young age. I mean, I became, just as I was starting my business, I became an instant mom, stepmom. And my son was raised in our house and then my daughter later. And so, it was kind of like, well, wait a minute, I'm supposed to plan for this. I'm supposed to have 18 years to put money away for college.
Yeah.
And, so that was one part. I became an instant mom when I first married, and my mother-in-law came to live with me about 5 months out of the year. So it was a whole different world than where I was, a month previous to, whatever. And, and then going through the different cycles of the business and then having family involved. And now I'm a grandmother. I'm a great grandmother. I can't believe it because I'm only about 50 years old, I think. So I look at the different stages of life, and there's been a time when, it's all about growing and growth. And now it's more about learning and how can we help the community and how can we give back. And, so every stage has been different.
Yeah.
And there was, so when I look at my life, I don't know, I just look at everything we do today is based on what's already happened, right? Whatever experiences we've had. And we have yet to see what tomorrow will bring.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And it's also driven a lot by my family. I mean, I'm just, what makes me happy is when somebody has some passion or some need or I can participate in some way. I'm the first one to want to jump in. I just, so I don't know where their lives are going to take them. I mean, we've gone through every challenge that anybody else has done with health and other things. And, it just you kind of just move on to the next stage. And I talk about with our clients, and one of the reasons I think why we do the work we do with families generation after generation, because they didn't live here. This was not their community. All of our second and third, fourth generations are all outside the area, but it was probably because, we had started with the retiree and then went backwards from there. So we kind of knew if someone was like pre-retiree, we knew what their post-retirement was going to look like. We knew what kind of choices or decisions or challenges they'd have at age 70, at age 80, at age 90. We're celebrating now clients turning 100. I mean, and they have their full faculties,
Wow.
cognitively
Wow.
there,
That's incredible.
almost all physically there. It's amazing, you know? So, gosh, I don't know. It depends on when I die, what stage or when they make the film as to what it would look like. It's
Yeah.
kind of like we talked about the DISC assessment
Yeah,
personality.
of course, yeah.
Depending on what I'm doing and what my focus is, I vary
Yeah.
all the time, you
Yeah.
know? And I think life does too, where you put your priority and focus.
How about music in general in your life? If you're Bocelli's one you said that's on your list.
I love all kinds of music. I mean, my growing up with 3 older sisters, you know, and brother, they always got the turntable rights. So I got one. Yeah, These Boots Are Made for Walking was my one record I could play. But I grew up learning their music. I'm only now beginning to learn the music of my era. Interesting enough, like if I went to a concert, it was with them, you know, so the 70s, 80s. I love opera. We've gotten involved with Opera Naples. I know nothing about it. I had a staff member that was on the original, you know, founding of it, and they sang and did all that, her and her husband. So she encouraged us to kind of get involved. But then years later, now we're spending some time really going and seeing opera and understanding it. Before it's like art. I love the piece. I don't know anything about it. Never took an art appreciation class. Well, maybe one. But, you know, so music, I love all kinds of music, except I don't like acid rock. I don't like, or maybe even some of the rap. I don't like when I can't hear the words, when there's not a message or something and a beautiful orchestra or something accompanying it. But I like everything.
So I like to add, we have a Spotify playlist from all of our guests, and I like to add a couple of tracks from whoever. So Bocelli would be somebody who I would add for you. Yes.
Yeah, so I love Andrea Bocelli. I mean, we have visited with him and his family many, many times.
Wow.
We've been to, I'd probably say maybe 14 or 15 different concerts, and many of them were more small groups, like 40 to 100 people.
That's
and I
got to be a
just
life, what an experience it has to be.
he is grounded in family 100%. From the very first concert my husband surprised and took me to it was in Worcester, outside of Boston. And it was a surprise. And they had the red carpet, and all women were dressed in gowns. And I didn't know where I was going. I thought I was going to a client event for him. And but his mother was there, you know, selling the T-shirts. Whatever. The whole family traveled with him. And obviously family is critically important to him. And he's Italian, but he also has a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
And a high faith. And, you know, and I appreciate the relationship he has with his kids and now the talent that he's helping encourage them to develop.
Yeah.
You know, when we first saw his daughter sing, it was her first time in front of like a crowd, you
Yeah,
know, and
wow.
Matteo, the same thing. He had just done his first duet it was Fall on Me with him and his father. And now I see, you know, then we went recently to see him in Tampa because I said, I want to see where he's grown from, you know. And I mean, he did his own concert with a phenomenal job. I mean, he's finding his own way and taking guidance from his father as well. So can you imagine how proud he must feel? And he would have never looked at his son as a singer as if his wife hadn't said, sit down and listen to your son. Because he had never thought about that with his kids. But yeah, so I like him as a person. He was introduced to me by one of my mentors, Joe Diadamo, before he ever toured in the U.S. or was ever known. He was playing like piano bars in Italy. But he was Italian and very much embedded in his roots.
Yeah.
His kids have dual residency, you know, because of that heritage that they appreciate so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear that. His voice.
So what are your most selected soundtracks that your clients like?
All over the place.
Because you have a broad age.
Really is, because all over the place. Kristen Corey was on before, and she has you know, musicals and things from theater, obviously.
Oh, of course, and I love musicals.
To 70s, to rap, to it's pretty awesome array of music. You know, because everybody has. A lot of our guests, that people that I've talked to anyway, have a pretty wide range of what they like.
I like music that stimulates an emotion, whether it's sadness or happiness.
It's very impactful.
Doesn't matter. It's got it right.
Especially Bocelli. Oh my gosh, it will hit your heart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in a way, I can imagine seeing him live. I like
it's amazing.
Experience is nothing you can put into words, I would imagine.
I had a blessing of being in two of his homes. I'm going to be in the third one in September when I go. But when we first went over to Miami and we were a small crowd around his pool and his home there, he was right across the pool with himself performing with a piano. And then his daughter came out and did a couple songs. And
Wow.
I was like, I still can't believe it. I'll go back and look at a video or a picture and say, I was not sitting there a pool length, not even a length, a width away from Bocelli.
Incredible.
He's just amazing. And I don't know how he does it, his the touring. But there, again, it's the family that holds it together.
Yeah.
It's what Veronica does to help make this possible for him to share his talent and his gift. And that's how he looks at his talent. And he doesn't look at his blindness as being, something that takes away from that gift or what he can give. And I think that's an amazing person.
Yeah.
And to have that talent and share it, to be in front of an audience and move people by just your song.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It really moves people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't talked about? Anything that people should know?
Well, I guess we talked a lot about family. So one of the things I've got to say is that family can be not necessarily blood. It can be who becomes your family, who you create as family. And I think that where you do have blood family, appreciate the uniqueness, but find the similarity and stay connected. There's so many families and siblings because geography has torn us all apart in a different way, even though, FaceTime and that has brought people together.
Yeah.
You don't grow up knowing each other. Take the time. We were playing, what's it called, Wordle or something. Well, it wasn't the matter that we were doing that. We conference in the 5 sisters. It was more the 5 minutes. I mean, literally, we'd be 5 or 10 minutes on the phone, but we would hear something about somebody's day that we could either send a, prayer of love or congratulate or whatever. And I think that's important and that people should try to bridge families together more because they really have your back.
Yeah.
And I thank God every day and have incredible gratitude for my brothers and sisters and the fact that we work together, many of us. I mean, who gets that opportunity? You're getting that with some of your family, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And growing up with your dad and mom. But I guess, and it becomes really important later in life too. I mean, we played as kids. You grow apart during the interim time period if you're not working on something together like a business. And then you come together as an adult. And it is really neat to get to know that. When we do these family retreats, which, like, for example, we did one in Williamsburg. It lasted over 3 days. Sometimes it might just be a day in our offices, or it could be a 3-day event like this. That was a special place for mom and dad to go to. So we brought the kids and we said any grandchild over the age of 12 can participate, but we want all the family members to come. So we're going to mix fun where everybody is involved, and then we're going to mix business, where we're going to talk about the trust and the legacy with just the family members that should be in the room. So those family members got to experience that something important was going on for the family, and that allowed them, first off, and this is where Jan used to play a great part, is he'd come in and get them to know about each other. I mean, there were things that they didn't even know their sibling had done or invented or got, an award for, or just things like that. They had no clue, or what they may be going through with their spouse on some kind of challenge. So it's really neat to see that unfold and then develop, and years later see something come in place. But if you look for something to happen the best it can immediately, if you put urgency to it, not going to happen. I think the best thing I've learned, especially from really great folks in this community, is, you drop a seed and it takes time to water it and develop it. When I look today, and I don't know if you know the Pasadamos. I love John and Kathy.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that was so heartbreaking.
And when I went to his celebration, I saw all the people that their lives have touched and his life touched. Yeah. And, he truly touched them in a way that made a difference and made a difference for everybody in our community, whether they knew him or not. And the same thing with the work that Kathleen has done. And, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
That must feel good.
He's my idol in life. I mean, that man I was still am so torn by what happened to him.
Oh, I know.
Because he's
I
just
know.
such an incredible human. I just know him from the salon. Never saw him
I know.
outside of here, but for many years he'd come in. But he was always his nature always was so special.
Gentle,
just there was a presence
special.
about him. Yeah. That I just
Strong
really wanted to
presence.
be. I was like, that's who I want to be when I grow up. You're the perfect man.
He'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
He's listening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Special human.
so-
Yeah. His legacy, what he leaves in the world. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for
No, thank you.
having this talk.
I have the last
whatever it
piece
is.
of icing on you. The last
Okay.
piece of icing for this conversation. And that is, what do you love about your life?
Oh my goodness. What do I love about my life? Everything. I love that having had a great loss with my husband and my soulmate, that I have been blessed with another soulmate in Jan in my life, who is the kindest, most gentlest, giving person I know. I just love that he accepts the Ciccarellis every which way, which is wonderful. It takes a lot. We're a powerful force.
Yeah.
And I guess that I can participate and be a mom without ever have given birth is a blessing that, not too many people get to experience. First of all, two loves of their lives. And secondly, to have children and the blessing of close relationships with those children. Their mom is still living, wonderful person, and they have a stepfather. And we always wanted from the very beginning for them to feel that they had a connected family, not a separation of two families. So I think that, the fact that we're able to do that and that I'm still blessed with them in my life, even though I lost their dad, they lost their dad so early on. He was 49. I was 35 at the time. My son was about ready to turn 18. And we had agreed no life support, but we put Dean on life support because he would have died on my son's birthday. So we extended it, and we were all on board with that. But having had the ability to be around so many different people and learn from them, and if I can make a difference in just one person at a time, I'm happy with that. That's so gratifying.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've been given that opportunity to somehow have a gift that helps people, I think that's far more fun and really a great takeaway. And I want it to last forever. I mean, I look at what my dad did even up to the time of his late 80s, and before he passed away, he was still helping people all the time. He was doing stuff, and that was what he called retirement, But I don't know. Every challenge I'm thankful for because it created something in me that made me stronger. And without my family, I wouldn't even want to be here, to tell you the truth. That's how much it means to me. So I'm just thrilled. And as long as I have them, and I keep knocking on wood and thinking that they're here, they're alive, they're close, we still hang out. That's what I'm blessed about. And all my clients, those people are family too.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, this was fun. I didn't know what it would be, but this was a nice conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rob, and I'm getting to know you.
Yeah,
which is great.
It's an opportunity for me to get to know deeply the people in our community, because it's not like being at a bar. It's not like being at a coffee shop. There's no interruptions. There's no phone. It's literally one-on-one conversation, which doesn't
It's
happen
really
often.
nice. No, it doesn't, especially with a stranger. Or
Right.
somebody you haven't
Yeah,
met
right.
or spent time with, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank
thanks.
you.
No, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate
It's an honor
it.
for me, to get to meet you. And, I've seen your business. You're on 96th.
Yes,
Used to be-
96.
Used to be the old shop and go. I remember I used to ride my bike to that.
Absolutely,
Used
but
to
it
ride my
was
bike
one
there.
building. You're
Yes.
exactly right.
Yes.
And then they added on the back area, and developer in Lytton took it over. You remember him?
Yes.
And his business as a designer. When we were trying to buy a place, ever since I moved to Naples 45 years ago,
Yeah.
when we were trying to buy a restaurant for Lou to run, and the prices were astronomical, we said, this has got to be funny money, because there's no way these stats, the numbers don't work. You can't make a living out of the restaurant business based
Right.
on the prices.
How? Yeah, right.
They
right.
weren't. They
There's
were
no
all
way.
losses. It was all drug money. I
Yeah.
mean, it was,
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
I can tell you some of the places,
Yeah, I remember
but
that,
that's
yeah.
why we chose not to go that way. But, it's just been a great experience to even grow up with Naples. I mean, like I said, I still think we're both very young. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, we
it's
are.
amazing to me that we get all of this exposure of watching a community change and develop
Yeah.
that usually you wouldn't get,
Mm-mm.
in a lifetime.
No.
And there's still
no.
a whole lot more to come.
Yeah. It
So-
keeps on going. Yeah. We're blessed.
Yep, exactly.
I love it. Thank
So
you.
congratulations on what you've accomplished.